bottomless pit, and you're both heading for it, said an oily voice. The speaker was Mar. She was oozing down the stairs. We've been looking for you up and down, she said to Harvey. You'd better come with me, child. She extended her arms in Harvey's direction. He remembered all too well her transforming touch. Come, come, she said. I might still get you out of trouble if you let me make something humble of you. He likes humble things, does Mr. Hood. Fleas, worms, scabby dogs. Come to me, child, quickly.
Hey,
Harvey looked
Fire,
around
how
the
you
cellar.
doing, bro?
There were no other
Good to
ways
see
out.
ya.
If he was to get Mrs. Griffin up
Try
into
to
the
get
sun,
this shit
it
out
had to
and
be by way of the
we
stairs,
might start it up
and
a
Mar
little
was
bit.
standing
Yeah,
in front of them.
we got
He
to,
took a step in her
recon
direction.
loaded up, so
She smiled toothlessly. Good
my dad
shot,
did that.
good, she said. Don't, Mrs. Griffin said. She'll hurt you. Hush, woman, Mar said. We're going to have to nail that lid down next time. Her greasy green eyes swiveled back in Harvey's direction. He knows what's good for him, don't you, boy? Harvey didn't
It's not
reply.
going too bad.
He simply
Can't
kept
complain too
walking
much.
toward Mar, whose fingers seemed to be growing like a snail's horns, reaching out to fix upon his face. You've been such an obedient boy, Mar went on. Maybe I won't turn you into a worm after all. What would you like to be? Tell me what's in your heart. Never mind my heart, Harvey said, reaching out toward Mar. What about yours? A puzzled look came over Mar's face. Mine? She said. Yes, said Harvey. What do you dream of being? I never dreamed, she said defiantly. You should try it, Harvey told her. If you can change me into a worm or a bat, what could you do for yourself? The defiance on her face became
Got my
bafflement,
pen.
and the bafflement turned to panic. Her outstretched fingers began to retreat into themselves. Harvey reached for them like lightning, however, interweaving his fingers with hers. What do you want to be? He said to her. Think. She started to struggle, and he felt her magic surging through her fingers into his, attempting to work some change on him. But he didn't want to be a vampire bat anymore, and he certainly didn't want to be a worm. He was quite happy to be himself. The magic, therefore, had no hold on him. Instead, it flowed back into Mar, who began to shake as though she were being dipped in icy water. What are you doing? She demanded. Tell me what's in your heart, he said, returning her invitation. I'm not telling you, she replied, still trying to wrest her fingers free of his. But she was not used to having her victims resist her this way. Her muscles were soft and flabby. She pulled and pulled, but she couldn't escape him. Leave me alone, she said. If you harm me, Mr. Hood will have your head. I'm not harming you, Harvey replied. I'm just letting you have your dreams, the way you let me have mine. I don't want them, she yelled, struggling more than ever. He wouldn't let her go. Instead, he drew closer to her, as if to wrap her up in his arms. She started to spit at him, great gobs of slime, but he wiped them from his face and kept approaching her. No, she began to murmur. No. But she couldn't keep the magic she'd intended for him from working on her own skin and bones. Her fat face began to soften and run like melting wax. Her body sagged in its ragged coat, and a greenish gruel began to pour out onto the floor. Oh, she sobbed. You damnable child. What dream was this, Harvey wondered, that was turning Mar to mush? She was growing smaller all the time, her clothes dropping off her as her body shrank, her voice becoming thin. It could only be moments before she disappeared altogether. What do you dream about? Harvey said, as Mar's fingers ran away between his own like brackish water. I dream of nothing, Mar replied, her eyes sinking back into her disintegrating skull. And that's what I've become. She was almost lost in the folds of her clothes. Nothing, she said again. She was no more than a dirty puddle now, a puddle with a fading voice. Nothing. Then she was gone, devoured by her own magic. You did it, Mrs. Griffin said. Child, you did it. 1 down, 3 to go, Harvey said. 3? Rictus, Jive, and Hood himself. You are forgetting Karna. Is it still alive? Mrs. Griffin nodded. I'm afraid I've heard its shrieks every night. It wants revenge. And I want my life back, Harvey said, taking her by the arm and escorting her, still carrying Stewcat, to the bottom of the stairs. I'm going to get it, Mrs. Griffin. Whatever it takes, I'm going to get it. Mrs. Griffin glanced back at the heap of clothes that marked the place where Mar had vanished into thin air. Maybe you can, she said, with astonishment in her voice. Of all the children who've come here, maybe you're the one who can beat Hood at his own game. Chapter 19. Dust to Dust. Rictus was waiting at the top of the stairs. His smile was sweet. His words were not. You're a murderer now, my little man, he said. Do you like the feel of Mar's blood on your hands? He didn't kill her, Mrs. Griffin said. She was never alive. None of you are. What are we then? Rictus asked. Illusions, Harvey replied, ushering Mrs. Griffin and her cat past Rictus to the front door. It's all illusions. Rictus followed them, giggling insanely. What's so funny? Harvey said, opening the door to let Mrs. Griffin out into the sun. You are, Rictus. You think you know everything, but you don't know Mr. Hood. I will in a little while, said Harvey. Go and get warm, he told Mrs. Griffin. I'll be back. Be careful, child, she said. I will, he told her, then closed the door. You're a strange one, Rictus said, his smile failing a little. His face, when his teeth no longer dazzled, was like a mask made of dough. 2 thumbholes for eyes and a blob for a nose. I could suck out your brains through your ears, he said, all the music gone from his voice. Maybe you could, said Harvey, but you're not going to. How do you know? Because I've got an appointment with your master. He started toward the bottom of the stairs, but before he reached it, a dark figure flitted in front of him. It was Jive, and he was carrying a plate of apple pie and ice cream. It's a long climb, he said. Put something in your stomach first. Harvey looked down at the plate. The pie was golden brown and dusted with sugar, the ice cream melting in a sweet white pool. It certainly looked tempting. Go on, said Jive. You deserve a treat. No thanks, Harvey told him. Why not? Jive wanted to know, turning full circle on his heel. It's lighter than I am. But I know what it's made of, Harvey said. Apples and cinnamon and... No, said Harvey. I know what it's really made of. He looked back at the pie, and for a moment it seemed he glimpsed the truth of the thing, the gray dust and ashes from which this illusion was made. You think it's poison? Jive said. Is that it? Maybe, Harvey replied, still staring at the pie. Well, it's not, Jive said, and I'll prove it. Harvey heard Rictus make a warning sound behind him, but Jive didn't catch it. He plunged his fingers into the pie and ice cream and delivered them to his mouth in one swift motion. As he closed his mouth, Rictus said, "Don't swallow it." Again, too late. The food went down in one gulp. An instant later, Jive dropped the plate and began to slam his fists against his stomach, as if to force the food up again. But instead of half-chewed pie, a cloud of dust issued from between his teeth. Then another, then another. Half blinded, Jive snatched at Harvey's throat. "What have you done?" he coughed. Harvey had no difficulty shaking himself free. "It's all dust," he said. "Dirt and dust and ashes. All the food, all the presents, everything." "Help me," Jive said, clawing at his mouth. "Somebody help me." "There's no help for you now," came a solemn voice. Harvey looked around. It was Rictus who had spoken, and he was retreating across the hallway, his hands clamped to his face. He stared at Jive between his fingers, his teeth chattering as he voiced the horrid truth. "You shouldn't have eaten that pie," he said. "It's reminding your belly of what you're made of." "What's that?" Jive said. "What the boy says," Rictus replied. "Dirt and ashes." Jive threw back his head, howling "No!" at this. But even as he opened his mouth to deny it, the truth came pouring forth. Dry streams of dust that ran from his gullet and flowed over his fingers. It was like a fatal message being passed from one part of his body to another. Touched by the dust, his fingers began to crumple in their turn, and as they dropped, the same whisper of decay spread to his thighs and knees and feet. He started to drop to the ground, but with a final pirouette, swung himself around and grabbed hold of the banister. "Save me!" he yelled up the stairs. "Mr. Hood, can you hear me? Please, please, save me!" His legs crumbled beneath him now, but he refused to give up. He started to haul himself up the stairs, still yelling for Mr. Hood to heal him. There was no reply from the heights of the house, however, nor any sound now from Rictus. There were only Jive's pleas and wheezings and the hiss of dust as it ran away down the stairs from the emptying sack of his body. "What's going on?" Wendell said, appearing from the kitchen with ketchup smeared around his mouth. He stared at the cloud of dust that hung around the stairs, unable to see the creature at its heart. Harvey was closer to the cloud, however, and so was witness to Jive's last moments. The dying creature reached up with an almost fingerless hand, still hoping, even as its life drifted away, that its creator would come to save it. Then it sank down upon the stairs, and its last pitiful fragments crumbled. "Somebody been beating the carpet?" Wendell said, as Jive's dust
started
settled.
up again the next day. I started
"Too down,"
off.
Harvey murmured to himself. "What did you say?" Wendell wanted to know. Before he replied, Harvey glanced around the hallway looking
That's
for
what I usually
Rictus,
do at night to help me
but Hood's
sleep and
third
relax.
servant
I have
had disappeared.
real bad trouble sleeping.
"It doesn't
so
matter," Harvey said. "Are you done
I
eating?"
have audiobook
Yeah.
going. Do a little
Was the food
smoking
good?
and
Wendell grinned.
Relax.
"Yeah."
I hope
Harvey
it
shook
helps,
his head.
other people do the same.
"What does that mean?" Wendell
He
asked.
said, I hope everyone else
Harvey was on the
enjoys it.
verge of saying, "It means you can't help me. It means I have to go up and face Mr. Hood on my own." But what was the use? The house had
But
claimed
I
Wendell
am,
entirely. He'd be more of a hindrance than a
licensed
help in the
medical
battle ahead.
cannabis
So instead he said,
person. I guess
"Mrs.
you said
Griffin's
I have my
outside."
medical cannabis
"So
card,
we found her?"
I'm
We found her.
legally able to do it in the
"Well,
state
go
I
say
live in.
hi," Wendell said with a cheery smile. "Good idea." Wendell had his hand on the door when he turned and said, "Where will you be?" But Harvey didn't answer. He'd already climbed past the heap of dust that marked Jive's demise and was nearing the top of the first flight, on his way to meet the power that lay waiting in the darkness of the attic. Chapter 20. The Thieves Meet. Glimpsing the dusty truth masquerading as pie and ice cream was one thing, but scratching the veneer of deceits that the house had polished to such perfection was quite another. As Harvey climbed the stairs, He kept hoping he'd find some little detail in the walls or the carpets that would allow him to get his mind's fingers beneath the lid of this illusion and lift it up to see what charmless thing lay inside. If Mar had been made of stale mud and spittle and jive of dust, what was the house itself made of? But it knew its business too well. However hard Harvey stared, he could not pierce its lies. It delighted his senses with warmth and color and the sense of summer. It cooed softly in his ear and played its gentle airs against his face. Even when he reached the dark landing at the top of the final flight, the house continued to pretend that this was just another innocent game of hide-and-seek, like the countless games it had seen played in its shadow. There were 5 doors ahead of him, every one of them ajar a few inches, as if to say, "There are no secrets here, not from a boy who wants the truth. Come look, come see, if you dare." He dared, but not in the way the house had planned. After spending a few moments examining the doors, he ignored all of them, and instead went back down a flight, chose a strong chair from one of the bedrooms, brought it back upstairs, climbed onto it, and pushed open the trap door that led onto the attic. It was hard work hauling himself up, but he knew when he'd finished and lay panting on the attic floor that his pursuit of Hood was almost at an end. The Vampire King was near. Who else but a master of illusions would live in a place so bereft of them? The attic was all the house was not. Filthy, murky, and cobwebbed. "Where are you?" he said. It was no use thinking he could surprise the enemy. Hood had watched his ascent from the first stair. "Come out," he yelled. "I want to see what a thief looks like." There was no reply at first. But then, from somewhere at the other end of the attic, Harvey heard a low, guttural growl. Not waiting for his eyes to become fully accustomed to the gloom, he started toward the utterance, the boards creaking beneath his feet as he went. Twice he stopped to look up, because a noise somewhere in the darkness overhead caught his attention. Was it a trapped bird, panicking as it flew blindly back and forth? Or roaches, perhaps, massed on the beams above him? He told himself to put such imaginings out of his head and concentrate on finding Hood. There were enough real reasons to be fearful here without inventing more. Unlike the area around the trapdoor, this end of the attic served as some kind of storeroom, and his enemy was surely lurking in the maze of rotting pictures and mildewed furniture. In fact, wasn't that a fluttering motion he saw now out of the corner of his eye? "Hood?" he said, squinting to try and make better sense of the shape in the shadows. "What are you doing hiding up here?" He took another step forward, and as he did so, he realized his error. This wasn't the mysterious Mr. Hood. He knew this shape, mangled though it was. The half-rotted wings, the tiny black eyes, the teeth, the endless teeth. It was Karna. The creature half rose from its squalid nest, snapping at Harvey as it did so. He made a stumbling retreat and might have been seized after 3 steps had Karna not been so hobbled by its wounds and slowed by the chaos of its surroundings. It struck out at the pile of detritus to the left and right of it, scattering chairs and overturning boxes, then hauled itself in pained pursuit of its prey. Harvey kept his eyes fixed upon the beast as he backed away, his mind buzzing with questions. Where was Hood? That was the main mystery. Mrs. Griffin had been certain he was up here somewhere, but Harvey had now wandered the attic from end to end, and its only occupant was the creature driving him back toward the exit. He chanced several glances into the shadows as he retreated, in case he'd missed some figure hiding there. It was not a human form his eyes alighted upon, however. It was a globe the size of a tennis ball, glowing as though filled with starlight. It appeared like a bubble from the boards and rose toward the roof. Momentarily forgetting his jeopardy, Harvey watched it as it ascended, joined by another, then a third and a fourth. Astonished by the sight, he took too little care where he was walking. He stumbled, fell, and ended up sprawled on the hard boards, staring up at the roof through a red haze of pain. And there above him was Hood in all his glory. Its face was spread over the entire roof, his features horribly distorted. His eyes were dark pits gouged into the timbers. His nose was flared and flattened grotesquely like the nose of an enormous bat. His mouth was a lipless slit that was surely 10 feet wide, from which issued a voice that was like the creaking of doors and the howling of chimneys and the rattling of windows. "Child," he said, "you have brought pain into my paradise. Shame on you." "What pain?" Harvey shouted back. He was shuddering to his marrow, but he knew this was no time to show his fear. He would deal in illusion the way the enemy did, pretending courage even if he didn't feel it. "I came to get what was mine, that's all," he said. Hood sucked one of the gleaming spheres into his mouth. Its light went out instantly. "Mar is dead," he said. "Jive is dead. Gone to muck and dust because of you." "They were never alive," Harvey said. "Did you not hear their sobs and pleas?" Hood demanded, the knots in his brow tightening. "Did you not pity them?" "No," Harvey said. "Then I will not pity you," came the rasping reply. "I will watch my poor Karna devour you from soul to scalp and take pleasure in it." Harvey glanced in Karna's direction. The beast had stopped advancing, but was poised to strike, its dripping jaws inches from Harvey's feet. Now that the beast was still, he could clearly see how badly wounded it was. Its body as ragged as a moldy rug, its huge head drooping as though every breath was a burden. As Harvey stared at it, he remembered something Mrs. Griffin had told him.
Hell yeah, D-man.
"I would welcome death now,"
a good
she said.
person.
"Like a friend I'd driven from my door."
Support to me and,
Maybe it wasn't a
my
journey
brother
to the
for,
stalk that was
a
awaiting
good minute
Connor.
now.
Maybe it was simply a return to the
Fire's been
nothingness
around
from which
for a
Hood
while.
had conjured it. But the creature wanted that gift, nevertheless. It was weary and wounded, kept alive not by any will of its own, but because Hood demanded its service. "Such a pity," the voice in the roof murmured. "What is?" Harvey said, looking back at Hood, who had two more of the globes at his lips. "To lose you this way," he went on. "Can't I persuade you to think again? After all, I've done you no harm. Why not come back and live here peacefully?" "You stole 30 years of time with my mom and dad from me," Harvey said. "If I stay here, you'll steal a lot more." "I only took the days you didn't want," Hood protested. "The rainy days, the gray days, the days you wished away. Where's the crime in that?" "I didn't know what I was losing," Harvey protested. "Ah," said Hood softly. "But isn't that always the way of it? Things slip from your fingers, and when they're gone, you regret it. But gone is gone, Harvey Swick." "No," Harvey said. "What you stole, I can steal back." At this, a gleam ignited in the twin pits of Hood's eyes. "You burn bright, Harvey Swick," he said. "I've never known a soul that burned as bright as yours." He frowned as if studying the boy below. "Now I understand," he said. "Understand what?" "Why it is you came back." Harvey began to say, "I came for what you took," but Hood was correcting him before he'd uttered 2 words. "You came because you knew you'd find a home here," Hood said. "We're both thieves, Harvey Swick. I take time, you take lives. But in the end, we're the same, both thieves of always." Repulsive as it was to think of himself in any way similar to this monster, there was some corner of Harvey that feared this was true. The thought silenced him. Perhaps we needn't be enemies, Hood said. Perhaps I should take you under my wing. My west wing. He laughed mirthlessly at his own joke. I can nurture you, help you better understand the dark paths. So I'll end up feeding on children like you? Harvey said. No thanks. I think you'd like it, Harvey Swick, Hood said. You've got a streak of the vampire in you already. There was no denying this. The very word vampire reminded him of his Halloween flight, of soaring against a harvest moon with his eyes burning red and his teeth sharp as razors. I see you remember, Hood said, catching the flicker of pleasure on Harvey's face. Harvey instantly put a scowl in its place. I don't want to stay here, he said. I just want to get what's mine and leave. Hood sighed. So sad, he said. So very sad. But if you will have what's yours, have death.
That's good.
Karna, the beast raised its pitiful head. Devour the boy. Before the wretched beast could shift itself, Harvey scrambled to his feet. In the race to the trapdoor, he knew he had little chance of outrunning Karna. But was there perhaps another way of laying the beast low? If he was a thief of always, as Hood had said, perhaps it was time to prove it. Not with dust, nor with stolen conjurings, but with the power in his own bones. Karna took a threatening step toward him, but instead of retreating, Harvey extended his hand in the creature's direction, as if to pat its decaying head. It hesitated, its expression mellowing into doubt. Devour him, the vampire king growled. The beast lowered its head, in expectation of punishment from above, but it was Harvey who laid his hand upon it, a gentle touch that sent a shudder through its body. It raised its snout to press itself against Harvey's palm, and as it did so, let out a long, low moan. There was neither pain in the sound nor complaint. In fact, it was almost a moan of gratitude, that for once it not be met with blows or with howls of horror. It turned its eyes up to Harvey's face, and a shudder of pleasure passed through its body. It seemed to know that the motion would prove fatal, because the instant after, it retreated from its comforter, and as it did so, its shudders multiplied, and its body suddenly flew into 1,000 pieces. Its teeth, which had seemed so fearsome moments before, rolled away into the darkness. Its massive skull shattered. Its spine collapsed. In a matter of seconds, it was no more than a heap of bone shards, so dry and so aged, even the most desperate dog would have passed them by. Harvey glanced up at the face in the roof. Hood's expression was one of utter perplexity. His mouth was agape, his eyes staring from their pits. Harvey didn't wait for him to break his silence. He simply turned his back on Karna's remains and hurried toward the trapdoor, half expecting the creature in the roof to slam it shut. There was no response from Hood, however, until Harvey was lowering himself down onto the chair on the landing. Only then, as Harvey took one last look up at the attic, did Hood speak. "Oh, my little thief," he murmured. "What shall we do
I'm going to
with
stack
you
right
now?"
now playing a little game I've been playing for a while. You can get on your
Chapter
tablet or
21,
your mobile phone.
Tricks
It's
and Temptations.
Raid Shadow Legends.
"You've done well," said the smiling face awaiting him at the top of the stairs. "I wondered where you'd gone to," Harvey
I've
said.
been playing it for a minute. I got all
"Always
kinds of
ready to
nice
serve,"
stuff.
came the unctuous reply.
Oh,
"Really?"
there
said
was, I
Harvey,
guess you could
stepping
say.
down off the chair and approaching the creature. "Of course," said Rictus. "Always." Now that he was closer to the man, Harvey saw the cracks in his veneer. He was plastering on a smile and smothering his words in butter and honey, but it was the sour smell of fear that oozed from his sickly skin. "You're afraid of me, aren't you?" Harvey said. "No, no," Rictus insisted. "I'm respectful, that's all. Mr. Hood thinks you're a bright boy. He's instructed me to offer whatever you want to make you stay." He spread his arms. "The sky's the limit." "You know what I want." "Anything but the years, thief. You can't have those. You won't even need them if you stay and become Mr. Hood's apprentice. You'll live forever, just like him." He dabbed at the sweat beads on his upper lip with a yellowed handkerchief. "Think about it," he said. "You might be able to kill the likes of Karna, or me, but you'll never hurt Hood. He's too old, too wise, too dead." "If I stayed," Harvey said. Rictus's grin spread. "Yes?" he purred. "Would the children in the lake go free?" "Why bother about them?" "Because one of them was my friend," Harvey reminded him. "You're thinking of little Lulu, aren't you?" Rictus said. "Well, let me tell you, she's very happy down there. They all are." "No, they're not," Harvey raged. "The lake's foul, and you know it." He took a step toward Rictus, who retreated as if in fear of his life, which perhaps he was. "How would you like it?" Harvey said, stabbing his finger in Rictus's direction. "Living in the cold and the dark?" "You're right," said Rictus, raising his hand in church. "Whatever you say." "I say, set them free now," Harvey replied. "And if you won't, then I will." He pushed Rictus aside and started down the stairs 2 at a time. He didn't have a clue what he was going to do when he got down to the lake. Fish were fish, after all, even if they'd once been children. If he tried to take them out of the lake, they'd surely drown in the air. But he was determined to somehow save them from Hood. Rictus came after him down the flight, chattering like a clockwork salesman. "What do you want?" he said. "Just imagine it and it's yours. How about your own motorcycle?" As he spoke, something gleamed on the landing below, and the sleekest motorcycle human eyes had ever seen rolled into view. "It's yours, my boy," Rictus said. "No thanks," Harvey said. "I don't blame you," Rictus said, kicking the motorcycle over as he sailed past it. "How about books? Do you like books?" Before Harvey could reply, the wall in front of him lifted like a great brick curtain, revealing shelf upon shelf of leather-bound volumes. "The masterpieces of the world," Rictus said. "From Aristotle to Zola." "No?" "No," said Harvey, hurrying on. "There's got to be something you want," Rictus said. They were heading toward the final flight of stairs now, and Rictus knew he didn't have very long before his prey was out in the open air. "You like dogs?" Rictus said, as a litter of yapping pups scampered up the stairs. "Pick one, hell, have 'em all." Harvey was tempted, but he stepped over them and on. "Something more exotic, maybe," Rictus said, as a flock of brilliantly feathered parrots descended from the ceiling. Harvey waved them away. "Too noisy, huh?" said Rictus. "You want something quiet and powerful. Tigers. That's what you want. Tigers." No sooner said than they padded into view in the hallway below. 2 white tigers, with eyes like polished gold. "Nowhere to keep 'em," Harvey said. "That's practical," Rictus conceded. "I like a practical kid." As the tigers bounded off, the telephone on the table beside the kitchen door began to ring. Rictus was down the flight in 2 springs and at the table in another 2. "Listen to this," he said. "It's the president. He wants to give you a medal." "No, he doesn't," Harvey said, tiring of this rigmarole now. He was at the bottom of the stairs and crossing to the front door. "You're right," said Rictus, ear to the phone again. "He wants to give you an oil field in Alaska." Harvey kept looking. No, I got that wrong. He wants to give you Alaska." "Too cold." He says, "How about Florida?" "Too hot." "Boy, you're a difficult guy to please, Harvey Swick." Harvey ignored him and turned the handle of the front door. Rictus slammed down the phone and raced toward him. "Wait up," he hollered. "Wait up, I'm not done yet." "You've got nothing I want," Harvey said, hauling open the front door. "They're all fakes." "What if they are?" said Rictus, suddenly hushed. "So's the sun out there. You can still enjoy it. And let me tell you, it takes a lot of magic to conjure up all these shams and hoaxes. Mr. Hood's really sweating to find you something you like." Ignoring him, Harvey stepped out onto the porch. Mrs. Griffin was standing on the lawn with Stu-Cat in her arms, squinting up at the house. She smiled when she saw Harvey emerge. "I heard such noises," she said. "What's been going on in there?" "I'll tell you later," said Harvey. "Where's Wendell?" "He wandered off," she said. Harvey cupped his hands around his mouth and yelled, "Wendell! Wendell!" His voice came back to him from the face of the house, but there was no reply from Wendell. "It's a warm afternoon," said Rictus, idling on the porch. "Maybe he went swimming." "Oh no," Harvey murmured. "No, not Wendell. Please, not Wendell." Rictus shrugged. "He was a goofy little kid anyhow," he said. "He'll probably look better as a fish." "No!" Harvey yelled up at the house. "This isn't fair. You can't do this. You can't." Tears started to cloud his eyes. He wiped them away with his fists. They were both useless, fists and tears. He couldn't soften Hood's heart with weeping, and he couldn't bring down the house with blows. He had no weapon against the enemy but his wits, and his wits were about at an end. Chapter 22. Appetite. Oh, to be a vampire again, Harvey thought. To have claws and fangs and a hunger for blood upon him, like the hunger he'd had that distant Halloween, the hunger he'd turned from in disgust. He wouldn't turn from it now. Oh no, he'd let it swell the beast in him so he could fly in Hood's face with his hatred razor sharp. But here wasn't a beast. It was a boy. It was the vampire king who had the power, not him. And then, as he stared up at the house, he remembered something that Rictus had told him at the door. "It takes a lot of magic to conjure up these shams and hoaxes," he'd said. "Mr. Hood's really sweating to find you something you like." Maybe I don't need fangs to suck him dry, Harvey thought. Maybe all I need is wishes. "I want to talk to Hood," he told Rictus. "Why?" "Well, maybe there are some things I'd like. Only I want to tell him about them personally." "He's listening," Rictus said, glancing back toward the house. Harvey scanned the windows and the eaves and the porch, but there was no sign of any presence. "I don't see him," he said. "Yes, you do," Rictus replied. "Is he in the house?" Harvey asked, staring through the open door. "Haven't you guessed yet?" Rictus replied. "He is the house." As he spoke, a cloud moved over the sun. The roof and walls darkened, and the entire house seemed to swell like a monstrous fungus.
Remember when I first read this?
It was alive. From the eaves to the foundation.
Still traveling, hitchhiking, hopping trains.
"Go on," Rictus said. "Speak to him. He's listening."
I got it from
Harvey took a step toward the
I think it
house.
was an old Borders.
"Can you hear me?" he said.
Bookstore that was going out of
The front door
business,
swung
so
a little wider, and a
75%
sighing breath from the
off
top
to
of the
have
stairs
some different
blew a
books.
cloud of Jive's dust out onto the porch.
And the book's not very
"He
thick.
can hear
About
you,"
like that.
said Rictus. "If I stay," Harvey began. "Yes," said the house, making the word from creaks and rattles. "You'll give me anything I want?" "For a bright boy like you," came the reply. "Anything." "You promise? On your magic?" "I promise. I promise. Just say the word." "Well, for a start, yeah. I lost my arc." "Then you must have another," My lodestar, the Hood House said. Bigger, better. And a board of the porch folded back as an ark 3 times the size of the first one rose into view. I don't want lead animals, Harvey said as he walked toward the steps. What then? Said Hood. Silver, gold. Flesh and blood, Harvey replied. Perfect little animals. I like a challenge, Hood said. And as he spoke, a tinny din of bellows and roars rose from the ark, and the little windows were flung open, and the doors flung wide, and 100 animals appeared, all perfect miniatures. Elephants, giraffes, hyenas, aardvarks, doves. Satisfied? Said Hood. Harvey shrugged. It's okay, I suppose, he said. Okay, said Hood. It's a little miracle. So make me another. Another ark? Another miracle. What would you like? Harvey turned his back on the Hood House and surveyed the lawn. The sight of Mrs. Griffin, watching with puzzlement, inspired the next request. I want flowers, he said, everywhere, and I don't want 2 alike. What for? Asked the Hood House. You said I could have whatever I wanted, Harvey replied. You didn't say I had to give you reasons. If I have to do that, all the fun goes out of it. Oh, I wouldn't want that, the Hood House said. You must have fun at all costs. So give me the flowers, Harvey insisted. The lawn began to tremble as though a minor earthquake were underway, and the next moment, countless shoots pressed up between the blades of grass. Mrs. Griffin began to laugh with delight. Look at them, she said. Just look. It was quite a show. Tens of thousands of flowers bursting into blossom at the same time. Harvey could have named a few of them if he'd been quizzed. Tulips, daffodils, roses. But most of them were new to him. Species that only bloomed at night on the high Himalayas or on the windswept plateaus of Tierra del Fuego. Flowers with blooms as big as his head or as small as his thumbnail. Blooms that stank like bad meat or smelled like a breeze from heaven itself. Even though he knew it was all an illusion, he was impressed and said so. Looks good, he told the Hood House. Satisfied? It wanted to know. Was its voice a little weaker than it had been earlier? Harvey wondered. He suspected it was. He showed no sign of that suspicion, however. He simply said, We're getting there. Getting where? Said the Hood House. Well, said Harvey, I guess we'll know when we arrive. A low growl of irritation came from the house, shaking the windows. 1 or 2 slates slid from the roof and smashed on the ground below. I'm going to have to be careful, Harvey thought. Hood's getting angry. Rictus echoed that thought. I hope you're not stringing Mr. Hood along, he warned, because he doesn't like that kind of game. He wants me happy, doesn't he? Harvey said. Of course. So how about something to eat? The kitchen's full, said Rictus. I don't want pies and hot dogs. I want... He paused, ransacking his memory for delicacies he'd heard about. Roast swan and oysters and those little black eggs. Caviar? Rictus suggested. That's it. I want caviar. Really? It's disgusting. I still want it, said Harvey. And frog's legs and horseradish and pomegranates. The meals were already appearing in the hallway, plate upon steaming plate. The smells were tantalizing at first, but the more dishes Harvey added to the list, the more sickly the mix became. He rapidly began to exhaust his menu of real meals, however. So instead of giving the house easy recipes like meatballs and pizzas, he started to invent dishes. I want crawfish cooked in cherry soda and horse steaks with jelly bean sauce and Boston cream cheese and pastrami soup. Wait, said Rictus. You're going too fast. But Harvey didn't stop. And pumpernickel stew and snail fudge with pig's foot clusters. Wait, the house howled. This time Harvey stopped. In the heat of his invention, he hadn't even looked to see if Hood was supplying him with these eatables. But now he saw all the dishes he demanded piled so high in the hallway that they were threatening to topple and float the ark on a noxious sea of sweetmeats and stews. "I know what you're doing," said the Hood House. Uh-oh, Harvey thought. He's on to me. He looked up from the feast at the door to the facade and saw that his plan to drain the house of its magic was indeed working. Many of the windows were now cracked or broken. The doors were peeling and hanging from their hinges. The porch boards were twisted and blighted. "You're testing me, aren't you?" said Hood. His voice had never been melodious, but it was now uglier than ever, like the rumble of the devil's belly. "Admit it, thief," he said. Harvey took a deep breath, then said, "If I'm going to be your apprentice, I need to know how powerful you are." "Are you satisfied?" the decaying house demanded. "Almost," Harvey said. "What more do you want?" it roared. What more indeed, Harvey thought. His mind was reeling with these ridiculous lists. He had little left in the way of demands. "You may have one final gift," the Hood House said. "One final proof of my power. Then you must accept me as your master forever and ever. Agreed?" Harvey felt a trickle of cold sweat run down his spine. He stared at the teetering house, his mind racing. What was left to demand? "Agreed," the house boomed. "Agreed," he said. "So tell me," it went on, "what do you want?" He looked at the tiny animals around the ark, and at the flowers, and at the food spewing through the door. What should he demand? One final request: to break Hood's back. But what? What? A gust of chilly wind came from the direction of the lake. Autumn could not be far off, the season of dying things. "I know," he said suddenly. "Tell me," the house replied. "Tell me, and let's have this game over once and for all. I want your bright soul under my wing, little thief." "And I want the seasons," Harvey said. "All the seasons at once." "At once?" "Yes, at once." "That's nonsensical." "It's what I want." "Stupid, imbecilic." "It's what I want. You said one more wish, and that's it." "Very well," said the house. "I will give it to you. And when you have it, little thief, your soul is mine." Chapter 23. The War of Seasons. Hood didn't waste any time. He'd no sooner made his final offer to Harvey than the balmy wind grew gusty, carrying off the lamb's wool clouds that had been drifting through the summer sky. In their place came a juggernaut, a thunderhead the size of a mountain, which loomed over the house like a shadow thrown against heaven. It had more than lightning at its dark heart. It had the light rains that came at early morning to coax forth the seeds of another spring. It had the drooping fogs of autumn and the spiraling snows that had brought so many midnight Christmases to the house. Now all three fell at once, rains, snows, and fogs, as a chilly sleet that all but covered the sun. It would have killed the flowers on the slope with cold had the wind not reached them first, tearing through the blossoms with such vehemence that every petal and leaf was snatched up into the air. Standing between this fragrant tide and a plummeting curtain of ice cloud, Harvey was barely able to stay upright. But he planted his feet wide apart and resisted every blast and buffet, determined not to take shelter. This spectacle might be the last he set eyes upon as a free spirit, indeed as a living spirit. He intended to enjoy it. It was a sight to behold, a battle the likes of which the planet had never seen. To his left, shafts of sunlight pierced the storm clouds in the name of summer, only to be smothered by autumn's fogs, while to his right, spring coaxed its legions out of bough and earth, then saw its buds murdered by winter's frosts before they could show their colors. Attack after attack was mounted and repulsed. Reveille and retreat sounded 100 times, but no one season was able to carry the day. It was soon impossible to distinguish defeats from victories. The rallies and the feints, the diversions and encirclements all became one confusion. Snows melted into rains as they fell. Rains were boiled into vapor and sweated new shoots out through the rot of their brothers. And somewhere in the midst of this chaos, the power that had brought it about raised its voice in rage, demanding that it cease. "Enough!" the hood house yelled. "Enough!" But its voice, which had once carried such terrible authority, had grown weak. Its orders went unnoticed, or if noticed, then disobeyed. The seasons raged on, throwing themselves against each other with rare abandon, and in passing tearing at the house which stood in the midst of their battlefield. The walls, which had begun to teeter as Hood's power diminished, were thrown over by the raging wind. The chimneys were racked by thunder and toppled. The lightning rods struck so many times they melted and fell through the slateless roof in a burning rain, setting fire to every floorboard, banister, and stick of furniture they touched. The porch, pummeled by hail, was reduced to matchwood. The staircase, rocked to its foundations by the growth and the dirt around it, collapsed like a tower of cards. Squinting against the face of the storm, Harvey witnessed all of this and rejoiced. He'd come to the house hoping to steal back the years that Hood had tricked from him, but he'd never dared believe he could bring the whole edifice down. Yet here it was, falling as he watched. Loud though the dins of wind and thunder were, they couldn't drown out the sound of the house as it perished and went to dust. Every nail and sill and brick seemed to shriek at once, a cry of pain that only oblivion could comfort. Harvey was denied a glimpse of Hood's last moments. A cloud of dirt rose like a veil to cover the sight.
Give me 1 second. I'll
But
be
he
right
knew
back.
the moment his battle with the vampire king was over, because the warring season suddenly turned to peace. The thunderhead softened its furies and dispersed. The wind dropped to an idling breeze. The fierce sun grew watery and veiled itself in mist. There was debris in the air, of course, petals and leaves, dust and ash. They fell like a dream rain, though their fall marked the end of a dream. "Oh,"
Battery low. Battery 10%.
she was standing just a few yards from him, gazing up at the sky. There was a little patch of blue above their heads, the first glimpse of real sky these few acres of ground had seen since Hood had founded his empire of illusions. But it was not the patch she was watching. It was a congregation of floating lights, the same that Harvey had seen Hood feeding upon in the attic, which had been freed by the collapse of the house. They were now moving in a steady stream toward the lake. "A children's soul," she said, her voice growing thinner as she spoke the word. "Beautiful." Her body was no longer solid, Harvey saw. She was fading away in front of him. "Oh no," he murmured. She took her eyes off the sky and stared down at her arms and the cat she was carrying in them. It too was growing insubstantial. "Look at us," Mrs. Griffin said, with a smile upon her weary face. "It feels so wonderful." "But you're disappearing." "I've lingered here far too long, sweet boy," she said. There were tears glistening on her face, but they were tears of joy, not of sadness. "It's time to go." She kept stroking Stu Cat as they both faded from sight. "You are the brightest soul I ever met, Harvey Swick," she said. "Keep shining, won't you?" Harvey wished he had some words to persuade her to stay a little while longer. But even if he'd had such words, he knew it would have been selfish to speak them. Mrs. Griffin had another life to go to, where every soul shone. Goodbye, child, she said. Wherever I go, I will speak of you with love. Then her ghostly form flickered out, leaving Harvey alone in the ruins. Chapter 24. A Fledgling Thief. It was not alone for long. Mrs. Griffin and Stu Cat had no sooner vanished from sight than Harvey heard a voice calling his name. The air was still thick with dust, and he had to look hard for the speaker, but after a little time he found her, stumbling toward him. Lulu? Who else? She said with a little laugh. The lake's dark water still soaked her from head to foot, but as it ran from her body and into the ground, the last traces of her silver scales went with it. When she opened her arms to him, they were human arms. You're free, he said, running to her and hugging her hard. I can't believe you're free. We're all free, she said, and glanced back toward the lake. An extraordinary sight met his eyes. A procession of laughing children coming toward him through the mist. Those closest to him were all but returned to their human shape, those behind them still shaking off their fishiness, step by step. We should all get out of here, Harvey said, looking toward the wall. I don't think we'll have any trouble getting through the mist now. One of the children behind Lulu had spotted a box of clothes in the rubble of the house, and announcing his find to the rest, stumbled through the debris to find something to wear. Lulu left Harvey's side to join the search, but not before she'd planted a kiss on his cheek. Don't expect one from me, said a voice out of the dust, and Wendell stepped into view, beaming from ear to ear. What did you do, Harvey? He wanted to know as he surveyed the chaos. Pull the place down brick by brick? Something like that, said Harvey, unable to conceal his pride. There was a roaring sound from the direction of the lake. What's that? Harvey wanted to know. The water's disappearing, Wendell said. Where to? Wendell shrugged. Who cares? He said. Maybe it's all being sucked to hell. Eager to witness this, Harvey walked toward the lake, and through the clouds of dirt in the air saw that it had indeed become a whirlpool, its once placid waters now a raging spiral. What happened to Hood, by the way? Wendell wanted to know. He's gone, said Harvey, almost mesmerized by the sight of the vortex. They've all gone. Even as the words left his lips, a voice said, Not quite. He turned from the waters, and there in the rubble stood Rictus. His fine jacket was torn, and his face was white with dust. He looked like a clown, a laughing clown. Now why would I take myself off? He asked. We never said goodbye. Harvey stared at him with bafflement on his face. Hood was gone, so was his magic. How could Rictus have survived the disappearance of his master? I know what you're thinking, said Rictus, reaching into his pocket. You're wondering why I'm not dead and gone. Well, I'll tell you. I did some planning ahead. He drew a glass globe, which flickered as though it held a dozen candle flames out of his pocket. I stole a little piece of the old man's magic, just in case he ever got tired of me and tried to put me out of my misery. He lifted the globe up to his leering face. I've got enough power here to keep me going for years and years, he said. Long enough to build a new house and take over where Hood left off. Oh, don't look so unhappy, kid. I got a place for you right here. He slapped his thigh. You can be my bird dog. I'll send you out looking for kitty winkies to bring home to Uncle Rictus. He slapped his thigh a second time. Come on, he said. Don't waste my time now. I don't... He stopped there, his gaze dropping to the rubble at his feet. A terrified whisper escaped his throat. Oh no, he murmured. I beg. Before he could finish his plea, a hand with foot-long fingers reached up from the rubble and snatched hold of his throat, dragging him down into the dirt in one swift motion. Mine, said a voice out of the ground. Mine. It was Hood, Harvey knew. There was no other voice on earth that cut so deep. Rictus struggled in his creator's grip, digging in the debris for some weapon, but none came to hand. All he had was his skill as a persuader. "The magic's yours," he said. "I was holding on to it for you." "Liar," said the voice that rose from the debris. I swear." "Give it to me, then," Hood demanded. "Where shall I put it?" Rictus asked, his voice a strangled croak. Hood's hand loosened him a little, and he managed to haul himself to his knees. "Right here," Hood said, hanging on to Rictus's collar by his littlest digit, while his forefinger pointed down toward the rubble. "Pour it into the ground." "But into the ground." Rictus pressed the globe between his palms, and it shattered like a sphere of spun sugar, its bright contents running out between his palms and into the ground in front of him. There was a moment of silence. Then a tremor ran through the rubble. Hood's finger let its captive slip, and Rictus hurriedly got to his feet. He had no chance to make an escape, however. Pieces of timber and stone instantly moved over the heaps of rubble toward the spot where he'd poured the magic. Several lifted high into the air. All Rictus could do was cover his head as the hail increased. Harvey was clear of this flying debris and might well have made a retreat in these few moments. But he was wiser than that. If he fled now, he knew his business with Hood would never be finished. It would be like a nightmare he could never quite shake from his head. Whatever happened next, however terrible, it would be better to see it and understand it than to turn his back and have his mind haunt him with imaginings to his dying day. He didn't have to wait long for Hood's next move. The hand holding Rictus's neck suddenly let him go, and in a flash was gone from sight. The following moment, the ground gaped and a form appeared, hunched over as it climbed out of its tomb in the rubble. Rictus let out a cry of horror, but it was short. Before he could retreat one step, the figure reached for him, and turning to face Harvey, held his traitorous servant high. Here, at last, was the evil that had built the holiday house, shaped more or less as a man. He was not made of flesh, blood, and bone, however. He had used the magic Rictus had unwillingly provided to create another body. In the high times of his evil, Hood had been the house. Now it was the other way around. The house, what was left of it, had become Mr. Hood. Chapter 25. The Vortex. His eyes were made of broken mirrors, and his face of gouged stone. He had a mane of splinters and limbs of timber. He had shattered slates for teeth and rusty screws for fingernails, and a cloak of rotted drapes that scarcely hid the darkness of his heart from sight. "So, thief," he said, ignoring Rictus's pitiful struggles. "You see me as the man was, or rather, as a copy of that man. Is it what you expected?" "Yes," Harvey said. "It's exactly what I expected." "Oh?" "You're dirt and muck and bits and pieces," Harvey said. "You're nothing." "Nothing am I," said Hood. "Nothing? I'll show you, thief. I'll show you what I am." "Let me kill him for you," Rictus managed to gasp. "You needn't bother. I'll do it." "You brought him here," Hood said, turning his splintered eyes on his servant. "You're to blame." "He's just a boy. I can deal with him. Just let me do it. Let me—" Before Rictus could finish, Hood took hold of his servant's head, and with one short motion simply twisted it off. A yellowish cloud of foul-smelling air rose from the severed neck, and Rictus, the last of Hood's abominable quartet, perished in an instant. Hood let the head go from his hand. It flew up into the air like an unknotted balloon, giving off a farting sputter as it looped the loop and finally fell, empty, to the ground. Hood casually dropped the body, which had summarily shrunk to nothing, and turned his mirrored gaze back upon Harvey. Now, thief, he said, you will see power. His mane of splinters stood on end, as though every one of them was ready to pierce Harvey's heart. His mouth grew wide as a tunnel, and a blast of sour, icy air rose from his belly. Come closer, he roared, opening his arms. The rags that clung there billowed and spread like the wings of some ancient vampire. A vampire that had dined on the blood of pterodactyl and tyrannosaur. Come, he said again, or must I come for you? Harvey didn't waste his breath with a reply. He'd need every gasp he had if he was to outpace this horror. Not even certain what direction he was taking, he turned on his heels and ran, as another blast of soul-freezing air struck him. The ground was treacherous, slippery and strewn with rubble. He fell within 6 strides and glanced back to see Hood descending upon him with a vengeful shriek. He hauled himself to his feet, Hood's rusted nails missing him by a whistling inch, and had taken 3 stumbling strides from Hood's shadow when he heard Lulu calling his name. He veered in the direction of her voice, but Hood caught the collar of his jacket. Got you, little thief, he roared, dragging Harvey back into his splintery embrace. Before Hood could catch better hold, however, Harvey threw back his arms and pitched himself forward. Off came the jacket, and he made a third dash for freedom, his eyes fixed on Lulu, who was beckoning him toward her. She was standing on the edge of the lake, he realized, perched inches from the spinning waters. Surely she didn't imagine they could escape into the lake. The vortex would tear them limb from limb. We can't, he yelled to Lulu. We must, she called back. It's the only way. He was within 3 strides of her now. He could see her bare feet slithering and sliding on a slimy rock as she fought to keep her balance. He reached out for her, determined to snatch her from her perch before she fell. But her eyes weren't on him. They were on the monster at his back. Lulu, he yelled, don't look. But her gaze was fixed upon Hood, her mouth agape, and Harvey couldn't help but glance back to see what fascinated her so. Hood's pursuit had thrown his coat of rags into disarray, and there was something between its folds, he saw, darker than any night sky or lightless cellar. What was it? The essence of his magic, perhaps, guarding his loveless heart? Do you give up? Hood said, driving Harvey back onto the rocks beside Lulu. Surely you would not choose the vortex over me. Go, Harvey murmured to Lulu, his gaze still fixed on the mystery beneath Hood's coat. He felt her hand grasp his for a moment. It's the only way, she said. Then her fingers were gone, and he was standing on the rocks alone. If you choose the flood, you will die horribly, Hood was saying. It will spin you apart, whereas He extended an inviting hand to Harvey, stepping up onto the rock as he did so. I offer you an easy death, rocked to sleep on a bed of illusions. He made a smile, and it was the foulest sight Harvey had ever seen. Choose, he said. Out of the corner of his eye, Harvey glimpsed Lulu. She had not fled, as he'd thought. She'd simply gone to find a weapon. And she had one, a piece of timber dragged out of the rubble. It would be precious little use against Hood's enormity, Harvey knew, but he was glad not to be alone in these last moments. He looked up at Hood's face. Maybe I should sleep, he said. The Vampire King smiled. Wise little thief, he replied, opening his arms to invite the boy into his shadow. Harvey took a step over the rock toward Hood, raising his hand as he did so. His face was reflected in the shattered mirrors of the vampire's eyes. 2 thieves in one head. Sleep, said Hood. But Harvey had no intention of sleeping yet. Before Hood could stop him, he grabbed hold of the creature's coat and pulled. The scraps came away with a wet tearing sound, and Hood let out a howl of rage as he was uncovered. There was no great enchantment at his heart. In fact, there was no heart at all. There was only a void, neither cold nor hot, living nor dead, made not of mystery, but of nothingness. The illusionist's illusion. Furious at this revelation, Hood let out another roar of rage and reached down to reclaim the rags of his coat from the thief's hands. Harvey took a quick step backwards, however, avoiding the fingers by a whisker. Hood came raging after him, his soul squealing on the rock, leaving Harvey with no choice but to retreat another step until he had nowhere to go but the flood. Again, Hood snatched at the filched rags, and would have had both coat and thief in one fatal grasp, had Lulu not run at him from behind, swinging the timber like a baseball bat. She struck the back of Hood's knee so hard, her weapon shattered, the impact pitching her to the ground. The blow was not without effect, however. It threw Hood off balance, and he flailed wildly, the thunder of the vortex shaking the rock on which he and Harvey perched, and threatening to toss them both into the maelstrom. Even now, Hood was determined to claim his rags back from Harvey and conceal the void in him. "Give me my coat, thief!" he howled. "It's all yours," Harvey yelled, and tossed the stolen rags toward the waters. Hood lunged after them, and as he did so, Harvey flung himself back toward solid ground. He heard Hood shriek behind him and turned to see the Vampire King, the rags in his fist, pitch head first into the frenzied waters. The maned head surfaced a moment later, and Hood struck out for the bank. But strong as he was, the vortex was stronger. It swept him away from the rocks, drawing him toward its center, where the waters were spiraling down into the earth. In terror, he started to plead for assistance, his pitiful bargains only audible when the whirlpool carried him to the bank, where Harvey and Lulu now stood. "Thief!" he yelled. "Help me, and I'll give you the world forever and ever." Then the ferocity of the waters began to rip at his makeshift body, tearing out his nails and rattling out his teeth, washing away his mane of splinters and shaking his limbs apart at the joints. Reduced to a living litter of flotsam and jetsam, he was drawn into the white waters at the whirlpool's heart, and shrieking with rage, went where all evil must go at last, into nothingness. On the shore, Harvey put his arms around Lulu, laughing and sobbing at the same time. "We did it," he said. "Did what?" said a voice at their backs, and they looked around to see Wendell wandering toward them, blithe as ever. Every article of clothing he found in the rubble was either too large or too small. "What's been going on?" he wanted to know. "What are you laughing at? What are you crying for?" He looked beyond Harvey and Lulu, in time to see the last fragments of Hood's body disappear with a fading howl. "And what was that?" he demanded. Harvey wiped the tears from his cheeks and got to his feet. At last, he had a purpose for Wendell's perpetual reply. "Who cares?" he said. Chapter 26. Living Proof. The wall of mist still hovered at the edge of Hood's domain, and it was there that the survivors gathered to say their farewells. None quite knew what adventures lay on the other side of the mist, of course. Each of the children had come into the house from a different year. Would they all find that age, give or take a month or two, awaiting them on the other side? "Even if we don't get the stolen years back," Lulu said as they prepared to step into the mist, "we're free because of you, Harvey." There were murmurs of thanks from the little crowd, and a few grateful tears. "Say something," Wendell hissed to Harvey. "Why? Because you're a hero?" "I don't feel like one." "So tell them that." Harvey raised his hands to hush the murmurs. "I just want to say, we'll probably all forget about being here in a little while." A few of the children said, "No, we won't," or "We'll always remember you." But Harvey insisted. "We will," he said. "We'll grow up and we'll forget, unless—" "Unless what?" asked Lulu. "Unless we remind ourselves every morning, or make a story of it, and tell everyone we meet." "They won't believe us," said one of the children. "That doesn't matter," said Harvey. "We'll know it's true, and that's what counts." This met with approval from all sides. "Now, let's go home," said Harvey. "We've wasted too much time here already." Wendell nudged him in the ribs as the group dispersed. "What about telling them you're not a hero?" he said. "Oh, yeah," said Harvey with a mischievous smile. "I forgot about that." The first of the children were already braving the wall of mist, eager to put the horrors of Hood's prison behind them as soon as possible. Harvey watched them fading with every step they took, and wished he had a moment to talk to them, to find out who they were and why they had wandered into Hood's grip. Had they been orphans, with no other place to call home, or runaways like Wendell and Lulu, or simply bored with their lives, the way he'd been bored, and seduced by illusions? He would never know. They were disappearing one by one, until there was only Lulu, Wendell, and himself left on the inside of the wall. "Well," Wendell said to Harvey, "if time really is set to rights out there, then I'm going back a few more years than you." "That's true." "If we meet again, I'm going to be a lot older. You may not even know me." "I'll know you," Harvey said. "Promise?" said Wendell. "I promise." With that, they shook hands, and Wendell made his departure into the mist. He was gone in 3 strides. Lulu sighed heavily. "Have you ever wanted 2 things at the same time?" she asked Harvey. "But you knew you couldn't have both of them?" "Once or twice," said Harvey. "Why?" "Because I'd like to grow up with you and be your friend," she replied. "But I also want to go home. And I think in the year that's waiting for me on the other side of that wall, you haven't even been born." Harvey nodded sadly, glancing back toward the ruins. "I guess we do have one thing to thank Hood for." "What's that?" "We were children together," he said, taking hold of her hand. "At least for a little while." Lulu tried to smile, but her eyes were full of tears. "Let's go together as far as we can," Harvey said. "Yes, I'd like that," Lulu replied. And hand in hand, they walked toward the wall. At the last moment before the mist eclipsed them, they looked around at each other, and Harvey said, "Home." Then they stepped into the wall. For the first stride, he felt Lulu's hand in his, but by the second stride, it had grown faint, and by the third, when he stepped out into the street, it and she had gone completely, delivered back into the time from which she'd stepped all those seasons ago. Harvey looked up at the sky. The sun had set, but its pinkish light still found the ribs of cloud laid high above him. The wind was gusty and chilled the sweat of fear and exertion on his face and spine. Teeth chattering, he started home through the darkening streets, uncertain what awaited. It was strange that after so many victories, the simple business of walking home should defeat him. But defeat him it did. After an hour of wandering, his wits and strength, which had preserved him from every terror Hood could conjure, failed him. His head began to spin, his legs buckled beneath him, and he fell down on the sidewalk, exhausted. Luckily, 2 passers-by took pity on him and gently asked him where he lived. It was dangerous, he vaguely recalled, to trust his life to total strangers, but he had no choice. All he could do was give himself over to their care and hope that the world he'd returned to still had a little kindness in it. He woke in darkness, and for one heart-stopping moment, he thought the black lake had claimed him after all, and he was down in its depths, a prisoner. Crying out in terror, he sat up, and to his infinite relief saw the window at the bottom of his bed, the curtains slightly parted, and heard the light patter of rain upon the sill. He was home. He swung his legs out of bed and stood up. His whole body ached as though he'd gone 10 rounds with a heavyweight boxer, but he was strong enough to hobble to the door and open it. The sound of 2 familiar voices drifted up from the bottom of the stairs. "I'm just happy he's home," he heard his mom say. "So am I," said his dad. "But we need some explanations." "We'll get them," his mom went on, "but we shouldn't push him too hard." Clinging to the banisters as he went, Harvey started down the stairs, while his mom and dad continued to talk. "We need to find out the truth quickly," his father said. "I mean, suppose he was involved with something criminal." "Not Harvey." "Yes, Harvey. You saw the state of him. Blood and dirt all over him. He's not been out picking roses, that's for sure." At the bottom of the stairs, Harvey halted, a little afraid to face the truth. Had anything changed? Or were the two people just out of sight, still old and frail? He went to the door and pushed it open. His mom and dad were standing with their backs to him at the window, staring out at the rain. "Hello," he said. They both turned at the same moment, and Harvey let out a whoop of joy to see that all the griefs and the horrors of the house had not been endured in vain. Here was his prize, staring down at him, his mother and father, looking just the way they had before Rictus had come for him. The stolen years were back where they belonged, in his possession. "I'm a good thief," he said, half to himself. "Oh, my darling," said his mom, coming to him with open arms. He hugged her first, then his dad. "What have you been up to, son?" his dad wanted to know. Harvey remembered how difficult it had been to explain everything last time. So instead of even trying, he said, "I was just wandering around and I got lost. I didn't mean to get you upset." "You said something about a thief." "Did I?" "You know you did," his dad said sternly. "Well, are you a thief if you're taking something that belongs to you in the first place?" Harvey asked. His dad and mom exchanged puzzled looks. "No, honey," his mom said. "Of course not." "Then I'm not a thief," Harvey wrote. "I think you owe both of us the truth, Harvey," his mom said. "We want to know everything." "Everything?" "Everything," said his dad. So he told them the whole tale, just as they'd asked, right from the beginning. And if their expressions had been doubtful the last time he'd related his adventures, they were incredulous now. "Do you really expect us to believe all of this?" his father broke in while Harvey was talking about meeting Hood in the attic. "I can take you to the house," Harvey said, "or what's left of it. I couldn't find it last time because it hid itself from grown-ups, but Hood's gone, so there's no magic left to hide it with." Once again, his mom and dad exchanged baffled looks. "If you can find this Hood house," his father said, "we'd both like to see it." They set out early the following day, and this time, just as Harvey had expected, the way back to the house was not concealed by magic. He found the streets that Rictus had first led him along easily enough, and very soon the gentle slope on which the house had once stood came into view. "That's it," he said to his mom and dad. "The house stood there." "It's just a hill, Harvey," his dad said. "A hill covered in grass." It was indeed a surprise to see that the ground on which so many terrible deeds had been done had greened so quickly. "It all looks rather pretty," his mom said, as they came to the place where the mist wall had stood. "The ruins are under there, I swear," Harvey said, venturing onto the slope. "I'll show you. Come on." They weren't the only visitors here. There were several kite flyers plying the wind at the top of the ridge, a dozen or more dogs romping around, children laughing as they rolled down the slope, even a pair of lovers, whispering in each other's ears. Harvey resented the presence of all these people. How dare they romp and laugh and fly their kites here, he thought, as though it were just another hill. He wanted to tell them all that they were cavorting on the ruins of a vampire's house and see how quickly that wiped the smiles off their faces. But then, he thought, perhaps it was better this way. Better that the hill not be haunted by rumors and stories. The name of Hood would probably never cross the lips of these lovers and kite flyers, and why should it? His evil had no place in happy hearts. "Well," said Harvey's dad as the three of them climbed the slope, "this house of yours is well buried." Harvey went down on his haunches and dug at the dirt with his bare hands. The ground was soft and gave off the sweet smell of fertility. "Strange, isn't it?" said a voice. He looked up from his labors, both his fists full of dirt. A man a little older than his father was standing a few yards from him, smiling. "What are you talking about?" Harvey asked. The flowers, the ground, he said. Maybe the earth has its own magic. Good magic, I mean, and it's buried Hood's memory forever. You know about Hood? Harvey said. The man nodded. Oh, yes. What exactly do you know? Harvey's mom asked. Our son here's been telling us such strange stories. They're all true, the man said. You haven't even heard them, Harvey's dad. You should trust your boy, the man said. I have it on the best authority that he's a hero. Harvey's dad stared at his son with a twitch of a smile on his face. Really, he said. Were you one of Hood's prisoners? Not me, the man said. Then how do you know? The man glanced over his shoulder, and there at the bottom of the slope stood a woman in a white dress. Harvey studied the stranger, trying to make out her face, but her wide-brimmed hat kept her features in shadow. He started to get to his feet, intending to take a closer look, but the man said, Don't, please. She sent me in her place just to say hello. She remembers you the way you are. Young, that is, and she'd like you to remember her the same way. Lulu, Harvey murmured. The man neither confirmed nor denied this. He simply said to Harvey, I am much obliged to you, young man. I hope to be as fine a husband to her as you were a friend. Husband? Harvey mouthed. How time flies, the man said, consulting his watch. We're late for lunch. May I shake your hand, young sir? It's dirty, Harvey warned, letting the earth run between the fingers of his right hand. What could be better between us, the man replied with a smile, than this healing earth? He took Harvey's hand, shook it, and with a nod to Harvey's mom and dad, hurried back down the slope. Harvey watched as he spoke to the woman in the white dress, saw her nod, saw her smile in his direction. Then they were both gone, out into the street and away. Well, said Harvey's dad, it seems your Mr. Hood existed after all. So you believe me? Harvey asked. Something happened here, came the reply. And you were a hero. I believe that. Then that's enough, said Harvey's mom. You don't have to keep digging, sweetie. Whatever's under there should stay buried. Harvey was about to empty his left hand of dirt when his dad said, Let me have that, and opened his hand. Really? Said Harvey. I've heard a little good magic's always useful, came his father's reply. Isn't that right? Harvey smiled and poured a fistful of earth into his father's palm. Always, he said. The days that followed were unlike any Harvey had ever known. Though there was no more talk of Hood, or of the house, or of the green hill upon which it had once stood, the subject was a part of every look and laugh that passed between him and his parents. He knew they had only the vaguest sense of what had happened to them, but they were all three agreed on one thing, that it was fine to be together again. Time would be precious from now on. It would tick by, of course, as it always had. But Harvey was determined he wouldn't waste it with sighs and complaints. He'd fill every moment with the seasons he'd found in his heart, hopes like birds on a spring branch, happiness like a warm summer sun, magic like the rising mists of autumn, and best of all, love. Love enough for 1,000 Christmases.
This has been The Thief of Always, written by Clive Barker, narrated by Adam Verner. Copyright 1992 by Clive Barker.
Here's a record.
Start a new book tomorrow. It's not yet.
Of frightful laughter, and again closer this time.
This is Audible.
The savage tale of solemn.
I don't know what book to put on yet. I put some all right ones on so far. No, I had a hard time even it was just for tonight.
And rope. He could see shipyards further south along the river, of spices and iron and barley.
There we go.
Battery low. Battery 10%.
Melange. Most coming from the warehouses
Yeah.
behind the
Yeah,
docks.
it's getting low on the battery.
When the
flight.
wind swirled momentarily out of the
Stickers,
north, he caught the sense of fish, too. Those faded as the wind swung back. No smells of anything to hunt. His mind reached out to feel for wolves before he realized what he was doing and snapped his guards shut. He had done that too often of late. There had been no wolves, of course. Not in a city like this. He wished it did not feel so alone. As soon as the ramp at the end of the barge was lowered, he led Stepper up to the dock after Moraine and Lan. The huge shape of the Stone of Tyr lay off to their left, shadowed so that it looked like a mountain despite the great banner at its highest point. He did not want to look at the stone, but it seemed impossible to look at the city without seeing it. Is he here? Right, if he has already tried to get into that, he could be dead already. And then it would be all for nothing. What are we meant to find here? Zareen asked behind him. She had not stopped asking questions. She just did not ask them of the Aes Sedai or the warder. Ilion showed us gray men and the wild hunt. What does Tyr hold that someone wants to keep you from so badly? Perrin glanced around. None of the dockmen shuttling cargo about seemed to have heard. He was sure he would have smelled fear if they had. He bit back the sharp remark that hung on the end of his tongue. She had a quicker tongue and a sharper.
I wish you did not sound so eager,
Loyal rumbled.
You seem to think it will all be as easy as Ilion by you.
Easy, Zareen muttered. Easy. Loyal, we were nearly killed twice in one night. Ilion was enough for a hunter's song in itself. What makes you call it easy? Perrin grimaced. He wished Loyal had not decided to call Zareen by that name she had chosen. It was a constant reminder that Moraine thought she was Min's falcon. And it did nothing to stop Perrin wondering if she was the beautiful woman Min had warned him against, too. At least I've not run up against a hawk, or Tuathawan with a sword. Now that would be the strangest of all, for I am a wool merchant. Stop asking questions, Zareen, he said as he swung up into Stepper's saddle. You will find out why we are here when Moraine decides to tell you. He tried not to look at the stone. She turned those dark, tilted eyes on him. I do not think you know why, blacksmith. I think that is why you will not tell me, because you cannot. Admit it, farm boy. With a small sigh, he rode off the docks after Moraine and Lan. Zareen did not dig at Loyal in that cutting way when the Ogier refused to answer her questions. He thought she must be trying to browbeat him into using that name. He would not. Moraine had tied the oiled cloak behind her saddle, atop the innocuous-looking bundle that held the dragon banner, and despite the heat, had donned the blue linen cloak from Ilion. Its deep, wide hood hid her face. Her great serpent ring was on a cord around her neck. Tyr, she had said, did not forbid the presence of Aes Sedai, only channeling. But the defenders of the stone kept a close eye on any woman who wore the ring. She did not want to be watched on this visit to Tyr. Lan had stuffed his color-shifting cloak into his saddlebags 2 days earlier. When it had become apparent that whoever had sent the Darkhounds, Samael, Perrin thought with a shiver and tried not to think of the name at all, whoever had sent them had not sent any more pursuit. The warder had made no concessions to the heat of Ilion, and he made none to the lesser heat of Tyr. His gray-green coat was buttoned up all the way. Perrin wore his coat half undone and the neck of his shirt untied. Tyr might be a little cooler than Ilion, but it was still as hot as summer in the two rivers. And as always after rain, the dampness of the air made the heat seem worse. His axe belt hung looped around the tall pommel of his saddle. It was handy there, if he needed it. And he felt better not wearing it. He was surprised at the mud in the first streets they rode along. Only villages and smaller towns had dirt streets that he had seen, and Tyr was one of the great cities. But the people did not seem to mind, many going barefoot. A woman walking on little wooden platforms caught his attention for a time, and he wondered why they did not all wear them. Those baggy breeches on the men looked as if they might be cooler than the snug ones he wore, but he was sure he would feel a fool if he tried them. He made a picture in his head of himself wearing those breeches and one of those round straw hats, and chuckled at it.
What do you find funny, Perrin?
Loyal asked. His ears were drooping till their tufts were hidden in his hair, and he looked at the people in the street worriedly.
These folk look defeated, Perrin. They did not look this way when I was here last. Even people who let their grove be cut down do not deserve to look like this.
As Perrin began to study faces instead of just looking at everything at once, he saw that Loyal was right. Something had gone out of too many of those faces. Hope, maybe. Curiosity. They barely glanced at the party riding by, except to get out of the way of the horses. The Ogier, mounted on an animal as big as a draft horse, might as well have been Lan or Perrin. The streets changed, gaining wide stone paving after they passed inside the gates of the high gray city wall, past the hard, dark eyes of soldiers in breastplates, over red coats with wide sleeves ending in narrow white cuffs, and rimmed, round helmets with a ridge over the top. Instead of the baggy breeches other men wore, theirs were tight and tucked into knee-high boots. The soldiers frowned at Lan's sword and fingered their own, stared sharply at Perrin's axe and his bow, but in a way, despite their frowns and sharp looks, there was something beaten in their faces, too, as if nothing were really worth the effort any longer. The buildings were larger and taller inside the walls, though most were made no differently from those outside. The roofs looked a bit odd to Perrin, especially those that came to points, but he had seen so many different kinds of roof since leaving home that he only wondered what kind of nails they used with their tiles. In some places, the people did not use nails on their roof tiles at all. Palaces and great buildings stood among the smaller and more ordinary, seemingly placed haphazardly. A structure of towers and squarish white domes, surrounded on all sides by wide streets, might have shops and inns and houses on the other sides of those streets. A huge hall fronted by squared columns of marble 4 paces on a side, with 50 steps to climb to reach bronze doors 5 spans high, had a bakery one side and a tailor on the other. More men wore coats and breeches like the soldiers here, though in brighter colors and without armor, and some even wore swords. None of them went barefoot, not even those in baggy breeches. The women's dresses were often longer, their necklines lower to bare shoulders and even bosom. The cloth is likely to be silk as wool. The sea folk traded a good deal of silk through Tyr. As many sedan chairs and carriages drawn by teams of horses moved through the streets as ox carts and wagons. Yet too many of the faces had that same look of having given up. The inn Lan chose, the Star, had a weaver's shop on one side and a smithy on the other, with narrow alleyways between. The smithy was of undressed gray stone, the weaver's and the inn of wood, though the Star stood 4 stories tall and had small windows in its roof as well. The rattle of looms was hard-pressed to compete with the clang of the smith's hammer. They handed their horses over to stablemen to be taken around back and went inside the inn. There were fish smells from the kitchen, baking, and perhaps stewing, and the scent of roast mutton. The men in the common room all wore the tight coats and loose breeches. Perrin did not think richer men. Somehow he was sure the men in colorful coats with puffy sleeves and the bare-shouldered women in bright silk were all rich or nobles. Those folk would not put up with the noise. Perhaps that was why Lan had chosen it. "How are we supposed to sleep with this racketing?" Zareen muttered. "No questions?" he said with a smile. For a moment, he thought she was going to stick out her tongue at him. The innkeeper was a round-faced, balding man in a long, deep blue coat, those loose breeches, who bowed over hands clasped across his stout belly. His face had that look, a weary resignation. "The light shine on you, mistresses, and welcome," he sighed. "The light shine on you, masters, and welcome." He gave a small start at Perrin's yellow eyes, then passed wearily on to Loyal. "The light shine on you, friend Ogier, and welcome. It is a year or more since I have seen one of your kind in Tyr. Some work or other at the stone. They stayed in the stone, of course, but I saw them in the street one day." He finished with another sigh, seemingly unable to summon any curiosity as to why another Ogier had come to Tyr, or why any of them had come, for that matter. The balding man, whose name was Juraharit, showed them to their rooms himself. Apparently, Moraine's silk dress and the way she kept her face hidden, taken with Lan's hard face and sword, made them a lady and her guard in his eyes, and so worthy of his personal attention. Perrin he obviously took as some kind of retainer, and Zareen he was plainly unsure of, to her visible disgust. And Loyal was, after all, an Ogier. He called men to push beds together for Loyal, and offered Moraine a private room for her meals if she wished. She accepted graciously. They kept together through it all, making a small procession through the upper halls until Harit bowed and sighed his way out of their presence, leaving them all where they had begun, outside Moraine's room. The walls were white plaster, and Loyal's head brushed the hall ceiling. "Odious fellow," Zareen muttered, brushing furiously at the dust on her narrow skirts with both hands. "I believe he took me for your handmaid, Aes Sedai. I will not stand for that." "Watch your tongue," Lan said softly. "If you use that name where folk can hear, you will regret it, girl." She looked as if she were going to argue, but his icy blue eyes stilled her tongue this time. It did not cool her glare. Moraine ignored them. Staring off at nothing, she worked her cloak in her hands almost as if wiping them, unaware what she was doing, in Perrin's opinion. "How do we go about finding Rand?" he asked, but she did not appear to hear him. "Moraine?" "Remain close to the inn," she said after a moment. "Tyr can be a dangerous city for those who do not know its ways. The pattern can be torn here." That last was soft, as if to herself. In a stronger voice, she said, "Lan, let us see what we can discover without attracting attention. The rest of you, stay close to the inn." "Stay close to the inn," the ring mimicked as the Aes Sedai and the warder disappeared down the stairs. But she said it quietly enough that they would not hear. "This Rand, he is the one you called the..." If she looked like a falcon right then, it was a very uneasy falcon. We are in Tyr, where the heart of the stone holds, and the prophecies say, "The light burn me." Tyrion? Is this a story I want to be in? It is not a story, Zareen. For a moment, Perrin felt almost as hopeless as the innkeeper had sounded. The wheel weaves us into the pattern. You chose to tangle your thread with ours. It's too late to untangle it now. Light, she growled. Now you sound like her. He left her there with Loyal and went to put his things in his room. It had a low bed, comfortable but small, as city people seemed to think befitted a servant, a washstand, a stool, and a few pegs on the cracked plaster wall. When he came out, they were both gone. The ring of hammer on anvil called to him. So much in Tyr looked odd that it was a relief to walk into the smithy. The ground floor was all one large room with no back wall except for two long doors that stood open on a yard for shoeing horses and oxen, complete with an ox sling. Hammers stood in their stands, tongs of various kinds and sizes hung on the exposed joists of walls, buttresses and hoof knives and other farrier's tools lay neatly arranged on wooden benches, with chisels and beak irons and swages, and all the implements of the blacksmith's craft. Bins held lengths of iron and steel in various thicknesses. 5 grinding wheels of different roughness stood about the hard dirt floor, 6 anvils, and 3 stone-sided forges with their bellows, though only one held glowing coals. Quenching barrels stood ready to hand. The smith was plying his hammer on yellow-hot iron gripped in heavy tongs. He wore baggy breeches and had pale blue eyes, but the long leather vest over his bare chest and apron were not much different from those Perrin and Master Luhan had worn back in Emmons Field, and his thick arms and shoulders spoke of years working metal. His dark hair had almost the same amount of gray that Perrin remembered in Master Luhan. More vests and aprons hung on the wall as if the man had apprentices, but they were not in evidence now. The forge fire smelled like home. The hot iron smelled like home. The smith turned to thrust the piece he was working back into the coals, and Perrin stepped over to work the bellows for him. The man glanced at him, but said nothing. Perrin pulled the bellows handle up and down with slow, steady, even strokes, keeping the coals at the right heat. The smith went back to working the hot iron on the rounded horn of the anvil this time. Perrin thought he might be making a barrel scrape. The hammer rang with sharp, quick blows. The man spoke without looking up from his work. Apprentice, is all he said. Yes, Perrin replied just as simply. The smith worked on for a time. It was a barrel scrape, for cleaning the insides of wooden barrels. Now and again he eyed Perrin consideringly. Setting his hammer down just for a moment, Smith picked up a short length of thick, square stock and pushed it into Perrin's hand, then picked up his hammer again and resumed work. See what you can do with that, he said. Without even thinking about it, Perrin stepped over to an anvil on the other side of the forge and tapped the stock against its edge. It made a nice ring. The steel had not been left long enough in the slow furnace to pick up a great deal of carbon from the coal. He pushed it into the hot coals for almost its entire length, tasted the 2 water barrels to see which had been salted. The third was olive oil. Then took off his coat and shirt and chose a leather vest that would fit his chest. Most of these tyrant fellows were not as large as he, but he found one that would do. Finding an apron was easier. When he turned around, he saw the smith, still with his head down over his work, nodding and smiling to himself. But just because he knew his way around a smithy did not mean he had any skill at smithing. That was yet to be shown. When he came back to the anvil with 2 hammers, a set of long-handled flat tongs, and a sharp-topped hardy, the steel bar had heated to a dark red, except for a small bit of which he had left out of the coals. He worked the bellows, watching the color of the metal lighten, until it reached a yellow just short of white. Then he pulled it out with the tongs, laid it on the anvil, and picked up the heavier of the 2 hammers. About 10 pounds, he estimated, and with a longer handle than most people, who did not know metalworking, thought was necessary. He held it near the end. Hot metal gave off sparks, sometimes, and he had seen the scars in the hands of the smith from up at Round Hill, a careless fellow. He did not want to make anything elaborate or fancy. Simple things seemed best at the moment. He began by rounding the edges of the bar, then hammered the middle out into a broad blade, almost as thick as the original at the butt, but a good hand and a half long. From time to time, he returned the metal to the coals to keep it at the pale yellow, and after a time he shifted to the lighter hammer, half the weight of the first. The piece beyond the blade he thinned down, then bent it over the anvil horn in a curve down beside the blade. A wooden handle could be fitted onto that eventually. Setting the sharp chisel hardy into the anvil's hardy hole, he laid the glowing metal atop it. One sharp blow of the hammer cut off the tool he had made, or almost made. It would be a chamfer knife for smoothing and leveling the tops of barrel staves after they were hopped together, among other things. When he was done, the other man's barrel scrape had made him think of it. As soon as he had made the hot cut, he tossed the glowing metal into the salted quenching barrel. Unsalted gave a harder quench for the hardest metal, while the oil gave the softest for good knives. And swords, he had heard, but he had never had any part in making anything like that. When the metal had cooled enough to a dull gray, he removed it from the water and took it to the grinding wheels. A little slow work with the foot pedals ground a polish onto the blade. Carefully, he heated the blade portion again. This time, the colors deepened to straw to bronze. When the bronze color began to run up the blade in waves, he set it aside to cool. The final edge could be sharpened then. Quenching again would destroy the tempering he had just done. A very neat bit of work, the smith said. No wasted motion. You looking for work? My apprentices just walked away, all three of them, the worthless fools. And I've plenty you could do. Perrin shook his head. I do not know how long I will be in Tyr. I'd like to work a little longer if you do not mind. It has been a long time and I miss it. Maybe I could do some of the work your apprentices would have done. The smith snorted loudly. You're a deal better than any of those louts, moping around and staring, muttering about their nightmares, as if everyone doesn't have nightmares sometimes. Yes, you can work here as long as you want. I'd have orders for a dozen draw knives and 3 cooper's adzes, and a carpenter down the street needs a mortise hammer, and too much to list it. Start with the draw knives, and we will see how far we get before night. Perrin lost himself in the work, for a time forgetting everything but the heat of the metal, the ring of his hammer, and the smell of the forge. But there came a time when he looked up and found the smith, Dermid Ajala, he had said his name was, taking off his vest, and the shoeing yard dark. All the light came from the forge and a pair of lamps, and Zareen was sitting on an anvil by one of the cold forges watching him. So you really are a blacksmith, she said. He is that, mistress, Ajala said. Apprentice, he says, but the work he did today amounts to his master's piece as far as I am concerned. Fine stroking, and better than steady. Perrin shifted his feet at the compliments, and the smith grinned at him. Zareen stared at both of them with a lack of comprehension. Perrin went to replace the vest and apron on their peg, but once he had them off, he was suddenly conscious of Zareen's eyes on his back. It was as if she were touching him. For a moment, the herbal scent of her seemed overwhelming. He quickly pulled his shirt over his head and stuffed it raggedly into his breeches and jerked on his coat. When he turned around, Zareen wore one of those small, secretive smiles that had always made him nervous. Is this what you mean to do, then? She asked. Did you come all this way to be a blacksmith again? Ajala paused in the act of pulling the yard doors closed and listened. Perrin picked up the heavy hammer he had used, a 10-pound head with a handle as long as his forearm. It felt good in his hands. It felt right. The smith had glanced at his eyes once and never even blinked. It was the work that was important, the skill with metal, not the color of a man's eyes. No, he said sadly. One day, I hope, but not yet. He started to hang the hammer back on the wall. Take it. Ajala cleared his throat. I do not usually give away good hammers, but the work you have done today is worth more than the price of that hammer by far, and maybe it will help you to that one day. Man, if I've ever seen anyone made to hold a smith's hammer, it is you. So take it. Keep it. Perrin closed his hand around the haft. It did feel right. Thank you, he said.
I cannot say what this means to me. Just remember the one day, man. Just you remember it. As they left, Zareen looked up at him and said, You have any idea how strange men are, blacksmith? No, I do not think you did. She darted ahead, leaving him holding the hammer in one hand and scratching his head with the other. No one in the common room looked at him twice, a golden-eyed man carrying a smith's hammer. He went up to his room, remembering for once to light a tallow candle. His quiver and the axe hung from the same peg on the plaster wall. He hefted the axe in one hand, the hammer in the other. By weight of metal, the axe, with its half-moon blade and thick spear, was a good 5 or 6 pounds lighter than the hammer, but it felt 10 times heavier. Replacing the axe in the loop on his belt, he set the hammer on the floor beneath the peg, handle against the wall. The axe haft and hammer haft almost touched. 2 pieces of wood equally thick. 2 pieces of metal, near enough the same weight. For a long time he sat on the stool staring at them. He was still staring when Lan put his head into the room. Come, blacksmith. We have things to talk over. I am a blacksmith, Perrin said, and the warder frowned at him. Don't go winter crazy on me now, blacksmith. If you cannot carry your weight any longer, you may drag us all down the mountain. I'll carry my weight, Perrin growled. I will do what has to be done. What do you want? You, blacksmith. Don't you listen? Come on, farm boy. That name that Zareen so often called him pulled him to his feet angrily now, but Lan was already turning away. Perrin hurried into the hall, followed him toward the front of the inn, meaning to tell the warder he had had enough of this blacksmith and farm boy. His name was Perrin Ibarra. The warder had ducked into the inn's only private dining room, overlooking the street. Perrin followed him. Now listen, warder, You listen, Perrin, Moraine said. Be quiet and listen. Her face was smooth, but her eyes looked as grim as her voice sounded. Perrin had not realized anyone was in the room except for himself and the warder, standing with one arm up on the mantel of the unlit fireplace. Moraine sat at the table in the middle of the floor, a simple piece of black oak. None of the other chairs with their high carved backs were occupied. Zareen was leaning against the wall at the other end of the room from Lan, scowling, and Loyal had chosen to sit on the floor since none of the chairs really fit him. I'm glad you decided to join us, farm boy, Zareen said sarcastically. Moraine would not say anything until you came. She just looks at us as if she is deciding which of us is going to die. Be quiet, Moraine told her sharply. One of the Forsaken is in Tyr. The High Lord Saman is Balal. Perrin shivered. Loyal squeezed his eyes shut and groaned. I could have remained in the steading. I would probably have been very happy, married, whoever my mother chose. She is a fine woman, my mother, and she would not give me to a bad wife. His ears seemed to have hidden themselves completely in his shaggy hair. You can go back to steading Shangtai, Moraine said. Leave now if you wish. I will not stop you. Loyal opened one eye. I can go? If you wish, she said. Oh. He opened the other eye and scratched his cheek with blunt fingers the size of sausages. I suppose, if I have a choice, that I will stay with all of you. I have taken a great many notes, but not nearly enough to complete my book. And I would not like to leave Perrin and Rand. Moraine cut him off in a cold voice. Good, Loyal. I am glad that you are staying. I would be glad to use any knowledge you have. But until this is done, I have no time to listen to your complaints. I suppose, Zareen said in an unsteady voice, that there is no chance of me leaving. She looked at Moraine and shivered. I thought not. Blacksmith, if I live through this, I will make you pay. Perrin stared at her. Me? The fool woman thinks it's my fault? Did I ask her to come? He opened his mouth, saw the look in Moraine's eyes, and closed it again quickly. After a moment, he said, Is he after Rand? To stop him or kill him? I think not, she said quietly. Her voice was like cold steel. I fear he means to let Rand enter the heart of the stone and take Kalandor, then take it away from him. I fear he means to kill the Dragon Reborn with the very weapon that is meant to herald him. Do we run again? Zareen said. Like Ilion. I never thought to run, but I never thought to find the Forsaken when I took the Hunter's Oath. This time, Moraine said, we do not run. We dare not run. Worlds and time rest on Rand, on the Dragon Reborn. This time we fight. Perrin took a chair uneasily. Moraine, you are saying a lot of things right out that you've told us we must not even think about. You do have this room warded against listening, don't you? When she shook her head, he gripped the edge of the table hard enough to make the dark oak creak. I do not speak of a Myrddraal, Perrin. No one knows the strength of the Forsaken, except that Ishamael and Lanfear were the strongest, but the weakest of them could sense any warding I might set from a mile or more away, and rip all of us to shreds in seconds, possibly without stirring from where he stood. You're saying he can tie you in knots? Perrin muttered. Light, what are we supposed to do? How can we do anything? Even the Forsaken cannot stand up to balefire, she said. He wondered if that was what she had used on the Darkhounds. It still made him uneasy, what he had seen, and what she had said then. I have learned things in the last year, Perrin. I am more dangerous than when I came to Emond's Field. If I can come close enough to Balal, I can destroy him. But if he sees me first, he can destroy us all, long before I have a chance. She turned her attention to Loyal. What can you tell me of Balal? Perrin blinked in confusion. Loyal? Why are you asking him? Zareen burst out angrily. First you tell the blacksmith you mean us to fight one of the Forsaken, who can kill us all before we can even think. And now you ask Loyal about him? Loyal murmured urgently that name she used. Are you? But she did not even slow. I thought I said I knew everything. Light, at least I am smart enough not to say I will fight someone unless I know everything I can of him. You... She trailed off under Moraine's stare, muttering. Ogier, the Aes Sedai said coolly, have long memories, girl. It has been well over 100 generations since the breaking for humans, but less than 30 for Ogier. We still learn things from their stories that we did not know. Now tell me, Loyal, what do you know of Balal? And briefly for once, I want your long memory, not your long wind. Loyal cleared his throat, a sound much like firewood tumbling down a chute.
Balal.
His ears flickered out of his hair like hummingbird wings, then snapped down again.
I do not know what can be in the stories about him you do not already know. He is not much mentioned, except in the raising of the Hall of the Servants, just before Luz Therin Kinslayer and the 100 companions sealed him up with the Dark One. Jalanda, son of Arid, son of Koniam, wrote that he was called the Envious, that he forsook the light because he envied Luz Therin, and that he envied Ishamael and Lanfear too. In A Study of the War of the Shadow, Moylin, daughter of Hamada, daughter of Juendal, called Balal the Netweaver, but I do not know why. She mentioned him playing a game of stones with Luz Therin and winning, and that he always boasted of it.
He glanced at Moraine and rumbled.
I am trying to be brief. I do not know anything important about him. Several writers say Balal and Samael were both leaders in the fight against the Dark One before they forsook the light, and both were masters of the sword. That is truly all I know. He may be mentioned in other books, other stories, but I have not read them. Balal is just not spoken of very often. I am sorry I could not tell you anything useful.
Perhaps you have, Moraine told him. I did not know of the name, the Netweaver, or that he envied the dragon as well as his companions in the shadow. That strengthens my belief that he wants Kalandor. That must be the reason he has chosen to make himself a High Lord of Tyr. The Netweaver. A name for a schemer, a patient and cunning planner. You have done well, Loyal. For a moment, the Ogier's wide mouth curved up in a pleased smile, but then it curved down again. I will not pretend I am not afraid, Zareen said suddenly. Only a fool would not be afraid of the Forsaken. But I swore I would be one of you, and I will. That is all I wanted to say. Baron shook his head. She must be crazy. I could wish I were not one of this party. I could wish I were back home working Master Luhan's forge. Aloud he said, if he is inside the stone, if he is waiting there for Rand, we must go inside to reach him. How do we do that? Everyone keeps saying no one enters the stone without the permission of the High Lords, and looking at it, I don't see any way but through the gates. You do not go in, Lan said. Moraine and I will be the only ones to enter. The more who go, the harder it will be. Whatever way in I find, I cannot believe it will be easy even for only two. Guy Dean, Moraine began in a firm voice, but the warder cut her off with one just as firm. We go together, Moraine. I will not stand aside this time. After a moment, she nodded. Perrin thought he saw Lan relax. The rest of you had better get some sleep, the warder went on. I have to be out studying the stone. He paused. There is a thing that your news drove out of my head, Moraine. A small thing, and I cannot see what it might mean. There are Aiel in Tyr.
Aiel?
Loyal exclaimed.
Impossible. The entire city would be in a panic if one Aiel came through the gates.
I did not say they were walking the streets, Ogier. The rooftops and chimneys of the city make as good hiding as the waste. I saw no less than 3, though apparently no one else in Tyr has seen any of them. And if I saw 3, you can be sure there are many times that I did not see. It means nothing to me, Moraine said slowly. Perrin, why are you frowning in that way? He had not known that he was frowning. I was thinking about that Aiel and Remen. He said that when the stone falls, the Aiel will leave the threefold land. That's the waste, isn't it? He said it was a prophecy. I have read every word of the prophecies of the dragon, Moraine said softly. In every translation, there is no mention of the Aiel. We stagger blindly while Balal weaves his nets, and the wheel weaves the pattern around us. But are the Aiel the wheels weaving, or Balal's? Lan, you must find me the way into the stone quickly. Us. Find us a way in quickly. As you command, Aes Sedai, he said, but his tone was more warm than formal. He vanished through the door. Moraine frowned at the table, eyes clouded in thought. Zareen came over to look down at Perrin, her head tilted to one side. And what are you going to do, blacksmith? It seems they mean us to wait and watch while they go adventuring. Not that I will complain. He dotted that last. First, he told her, I'm going to have something to eat. And then I'm going to think about a hammer. Try to puzzle out how I feel about you.
Chapter 51. Bait for the net. From the corner of her eye, Nynaeve thought she glimpsed a tall man with reddish hair and a swirling brown cloak well down the sunlit street. But as she turned to peer from under the wide brim of the blue straw hat Aelwyn had given her, an ox-drawn wagon was already lumbering between them. When it lurched on, the man was nowhere to be seen. She was almost certain that had been a wooden flute case on his back, and his clothes were certainly not Tyron. It couldn't be Rand. Just because I keep dreaming about him does not mean he is going to come all the way from Almouth Plain. One of the barefoot men hurrying past, with the sickle-shaped tails of a dozen large fish sticking up from the basket on his back, suddenly tripped, catapulting silver-scaled fish over his head as he fell. He landed on hands and knees in the mud, staring at the fish that had come out of his basket. Every one of the long, sleek shapes stood upright, stuck nose down in the mud, forming a neat circle. Even a few passers-by gaped at that. Slowly, the man got to his feet, apparently unaware of the mud on him. Unslinging his basket, he began gathering the fish back into it, shaking his head and muttering to himself. Nynaeve blinked, But her business was with this cow-faced brigand facing her in the doorway of his shop with bloody cuts of meat hanging from hooks behind him. She gave her braid a tug and fixed the fellow with her eye. "Very well," she said sharply. "I will take it. But if this is what you charge for so poor a cut, you'll not have more business from me." He shrugged placidly as he took her coin, then wrapped the fatty mutton roast in a cloth she produced from the basket on her arm. She glared at him as she put the wrapped meat into the basket, but that did not affect him. She whirled to stalk away and nearly fell. She was still not used to these clogs. They kept sticking in the mud, and she could not see how the folk who wore them managed. She hoped this sunshine dried the ground soon, but she had a feeling that the mud was more or less permanent in the mole. Stepping gingerly, she started back toward Aylwyn's house, muttering under her breath. The prices were outrageous for everything, the quality inevitably poor, and almost no one seemed to care, not the people buying or those selling. It was a relief to pass a woman shouting at a shopkeeper, waving a bruised reddish-yellow fruit. Nynaeve did not know what. They had a good many fruits and vegetables she had never heard of here, in each hand, and calling for everyone to see what refuse the man sold. But the shopkeeper only stared at her wearily, not even bothering to argue back. There was some excuse for the prices, she knew. Elaine had explained all about the grain being eaten by rats in the granaries because no one in Cairhien could buy, and how big the Cairhien and grain trade had become since the Aiel War. But nothing excused the way everyone seemed ready to lie down and die. She had seen hail ruin food crops in the Two Rivers, and grasshoppers eat them, and Black Tongue kill the sheep, and Red Spot wither the tabac, so there was nothing to sell when the merchants came down from Bear Lawn. She could remember 2 years in a row when there had been little to eat except turnip soup and old barley, and hunters had been lucky to bring home a scrawny rabbit. But Two Rivers folk picked themselves up when they were knocked down and went back to work. These people had had only one bad year, and their fisheries and their other trade seemed to be flourishing. She had no patience with them. The trouble was, she knew she should have a little patience. They were odd people with odd ways, and things she took for cringing, they seemed to see as a matter of course, even Aylwyn and Sandar. She should be able to summon up just a little patience. If for them, why not for Egwene? She put that aside. The child behaved wretchedly, snapping at the most obvious suggestions, objecting to the most sensible things. Even when it was plain what they should do, Egwene wanted to be convinced. Nynaeve was not used to having to convince people, especially not people she had changed swaddling clothes for. The fact that she was only a matter of 7 years older than Egwene was of no account. "It is all those bad dreams," she told herself. "I cannot understand what they mean, and now Elaine and I are having them too, and I do not know what that means either, and Sandar won't say anything except that he is still looking, and I am so frustrated I could just spit." She jerked her braid so hard it hurt. At least she had been able to convince Egwene not to use the Turangrial again, to put the thing back in her pouch instead of wearing it next to her skin always. If the Black Ajah was in Talairan Riod, she did not want to think about that possibility. "We will find them. I will bring them down," she muttered. "Trying to sell me like a sheep, hunting me like an animal. I am the hunter this time, not the rabbit. Moiraine. If she had never come to Emond's Field, I could have taught Egwene enough. And Rand, I could have done something." That she knew neither was true did not help. It made it worse. She hated Moiraine almost as much as she hated Leandrin and the Black Ajah, maybe as much as she hated the Shanchan. She rounded a corner, and Juilin Sandar had to leap out of her way to keep from being trampled. Even used to them as he was, he nearly tripped over his own clogs, only his staff saving him from falling on his face in the mud. That pale, ridged wood was called bamboo, she had learned, and it was stronger than it looked. Mistress Mariam," Sandar said, regaining his balance. I was looking for you. He flashed her a nervous smile. Are you angry? Why are you frowning at me that way? She smoothed her forehead. I was not frowning at you, Master Sandar. The butcher... It does not matter. Why are you looking for me? Her breath caught. Have you found them? He looked around as if he suspected the passers-by of trying to listen. Yes, you must come back with me. The others are waiting. The others. And Mother Gwenna. Why are you so nervous? You did not let them discover your interest, she said sharply. What has frightened you? No, mistress. I did not reveal myself. His eyes darted again, and he stepped closer, his voice dropping to a breathy, urgent whisper. These women you seek, they are in the stone. Guests of a High Lord. The High Lord's salmon. Why did you call them thieves? The High Lord's salmon, he almost squeaked. There was sweat on his face. Inside the stone, with a High Lord. Light. How do we reach them now? She suppressed her impatience with an effort. Be easy, she said soothingly. Be at ease, Master Sandar. We can explain everything to your satisfaction. I hope we can. Light, if he goes running to the stone to tell this High Lord we are searching for them, come with me to Mother Gwenna's house. Jocelyn, Carola, and I will explain it all to you. Truly. Come. He gave a short, uneasy nod and walked alongside her, keeping his pace to what she could manage with the clogs. He looked as if he wanted to run. At the wise woman's house, she hurried around to the back. No one ever used the front door that she had seen, not even Mother Gwenna herself. The horses were tied to a bamboo hitching rail now, well away from Aylwyn's new figs, as well as her vegetables, with their saddles and bridles stored inside. For once she did not stop to pat Guydene's nose and tell him he was a good boy and more sensible than his namesake. Sandar halted to scrape mud from his clogs with the butt of his staff, but she hurried inside. Aylwyn Gwenna was sitting in one of her high-backed chairs pulled out into the room, her arms at her sides. The gray-haired woman's eyes were bulging with anger and fear, and she struggled furiously without moving a muscle. Nynaeve did not need to sense the subtle weaving of air to know what had happened. Light! They've found us! Burn you, Sandar! Rage flooded her, washed away the walls inside that usually kept her from the power, and as the basket fell from her hands, she was a white blossom on a blackthorn bush, opening to embrace Saidar, opening... It was as if she had run into another wall, a wall of clear glass. She could feel the true source, but the wall stopped everything except the ache to be filled with the one power. The basket hit the floor, and as it bounced, the door behind her opened and Leandrin stepped in, followed by a black-haired woman with a white streak above her left ear. They wore long, colorful silk dresses cut to bare their shoulders, and the glow of Saidar surrounded them. Leandrin smoothed her red dress and smiled with that pouting rosebud mouth. Her doll's face was filled with amusement. You see, do you not, Wilder? She began. You have no... Nynaeve hit her in the mouth as hard as she could. Light, I have to get away. She backhanded Rihanna so hard the black-haired woman fell on her silk-covered rump with a grunt. They must have the others, but if I can make it out the door, if I can get far enough away they can't shield me, I can do something. She pushed Leandrin hard, shoving her away from the door. Just let me escape their shielding and I'll... Blows hit her from every side, like fists and sticks, pummeling her. Nearly Leandrin, blood trickling from a corner of her now grim mouth, nor Rihanna, her hair as disarrayed as her green dress, lifted a hand. Nynaeve could feel the flows of air weaving about her as well as she could feel the blows themselves. She still struggled to reach the door, but she realized that she was on her knees now, and the unseen blows would not stop, invisible sticks and fists striking at her back and her stomach, her head and her hips, her shoulders, her breasts, her legs, her head. Groaning, she fell onto her side and curled into a ball, trying to protect herself. Oh, Light, I tried. Egwene, Elaine, I tried. I will not cry out. Burn you, you can beat me to death, but I won't cry. The blows stopped, but Nynaeve could not stop quivering. She felt bruised and battered from crown to toe. Leandrin crouched beside her, arms around her knees, silk rustling against silk. She had wiped the blood away from her mouth. Her dark eyes were hard, and there was no amusement on her face now. Perhaps you are too stupid to know when you are defeated, Wilder. You fought almost as wildly as that other foolish girl, that Egwene. She almost went mad. You must all learn to submit. You will learn to submit. Nynaeve shivered and reached for Saidar again. It was not that she had any real hope, but she had to do something. Forcing through her pain, she reached out and struck that invisible shield. Leandrin did have amusement back in her eyes now, the grim mirth of a nasty child who pulls the wings off flies. We have no use for this one, at least, Rhianna said, standing beside Aylwyn. I will stop her heart. Aylwyn's eyes nearly came out of her head. No! Leandrin's short, honey-colored braids swung as her head snapped around. Always you kill too quickly, and only the great Lord can make use of the dead. She smiled at the woman held to the chair by invisible bonds. You saw the soldiers who came with us, old woman. You know who waits for us in the stone. The High Lord Salmon. He will not be pleased if you speak of what happened inside your house today. If you hold your tongue, you will live, perhaps to serve him again one day. If you speak, you will serve only the great Lord of the Dark from beyond the grave. Which do you choose? Suddenly, Aylwyn could move her head. She shook her gray curls, working her mouth. I will hold my tongue, she said dejectedly, then gave Nynaeve an embarrassed, shamed look. If I speak, what good will it do? A High Lord could have my head by raising an eyebrow. What good can I do you, girl? What good? It is all right, Nynaeve said wearily. Who could she tell? All she could do is die. I know you would help if you could. Rhianna threw back her head and laughed. Aylwyn slumped, released completely, but she only sat there, staring at her hands in her lap. Between them, Leandrin and Rhianna pulled Nynaeve to her feet and pushed her toward the front of the house. You give us any trouble, the black-haired woman said in a hard voice, and I will make you peel off your own skin and dance in your bones. Nynaeve almost laughed. What trouble could I give? She was shielded from the true source. Her bruises ached so much she could barely stand. Anything she might do, they could handle like a child's tantrum. But my bruises will heal, burn you, and you'll make a slip yet. And when you do... There were others in the front room of the house, 2 big soldiers in rimmed round helmets and shiny breastplates over those puffy-sleeved red coats. The 2 men had sweat on their faces, and their dark eyes rolled as if they were as afraid as she. Amiko Nagoyan was there, slender and pretty with her long neck and pale skin, looking as innocent as a girl gathering flowers. Joya Bier had a friendly face despite that smooth-cheeked calm of a woman who has worked long with the power, almost a grandmother's face in its welcoming appearance, though her age had put no touch of gray in her dark hair, any more than it had wrinkled her skin. Her gray eyes looked more like those of the stepmother in the stories, the one who murdered the children of her husband's first wife. Both women shone with the power. Elaine stood between the 2 black sisters with a bruised eye and a swollen cheek and a split lip, one sleeve of her dress torn halfway off. I am sorry, Nynaeve, she said thickly, as if her jaw hurt. We never saw them until it was too late. Egwene lay in a crumpled heap on the floor, her face swollen with bruises, almost unrecognizable. As Nynaeve and her escort came in, one of the big soldiers hoisted Egwene over his shoulder. She dangled there as limply as a half-empty barley sack. What did you do to her? Nynaeve demanded. Burn you, what? Something unseen struck her across the mouth, hard enough to make her eyes go blank for a moment. Now, Joya Bier said, with a smile that her eyes belied. I will not stand for demands or bad language. She sounded like a grandmother, too. You speak when you are spoken to. I told you the girl she would not stop fighting, yes? Leandrin said. Let it be a lesson to you. If you try to cause any trouble, you will be treated no more gently. Nynaeve ached to do something for Egwene, but she let herself be pushed out into the street. She made them push her. It was a small way of fighting back, refusing to cooperate, but it was all she had at the moment. There were few people in the muddy street, as if everyone had decided it was much better to be somewhere else, and those few scurried by on the other side without a glance at the shiny black lacquered coach standing behind a team of 6 matched whites with tall white plumes on their bridles. A coachman dressed like the soldiers but without armor or swords sat on the seat, and another opened the door as they appeared from the house. Before he did, Nynaeve saw the sigil painted there, a silver gauntleted fist clutching jagged lightning bolts. She supposed it was High Lord Salmon's sign. A dark friend he must be if he deals with the Black Ajah. The light burn him. But she was more interested in the man who dropped to his knees in the mud at their appearance. Burn you, Sandar, why? She jumped as something that felt like a stick of wood struck her across the shoulders. Joya Bier smiled chidingly and waggled a finger. You will be respectful, child, or you might lose that tongue. Leandrin laughed. Tangling a hand in Sandar's black hair, she wrenched his head back. He stared up at her with the eyes of a faithful hound, or of a cur expecting a kick. Do not be too hard on this man. She even made man sound like dog. He had to be persuaded to serve. But I am very good at persuading, no? She laughed again. Sandar turned a confused stare on Nynaeve. I had to do it, Mistress Mariam. I had to. Leandrin twisted his hair, and his eyes went back to her, the anxious hounds once more. Light, Nynaeve thought. What did they do to him? What are they going to do to us? She and Elaine were bundled roughly into the coach, with Egwene slumped between them, her head lolling, and Leandrin and Rihanna climbed in and took the seat facing forward. The glow of Saidar still surrounded them. Where the others went, Nynaeve did not much care at that moment. She wanted to reach Egwene, to touch her, to comfort her hurts, but she could not move a muscle below her neck except to writhe. Flows of air bound the 3 of them like layers of tightly wrapped blankets. The coach lurched into motion, swaying hard in the mud despite its leather springs. If you have hurt her... Right, I can see they've hurt her. Why don't I say what I mean? But it was almost as hard to force the words out as it would have been to lift a hand. If you have killed her, I won't rest till you are all hunted down like wild dogs. Rihanna glared, but Leandrin only sniffed. Do not be a complete fool, Wilder. You are wanted alive. Dead bait will catch nothing. Bait? For what? For who? You are the fool, Leandrin. Do you think we are here alone? Only 3 of us and not even full Aes Sedai? We are bait, Leandrin, and you have walked into the trap like a fat grouse. Do not tell her that, Elaine said sharply, and Nynaeve blinked before she realized Elaine was helping her fabrication. If you let your anger get the best of you, you will tell them what they must not hear. They must take us inside the stone. They must be quiet, Nynaeve snapped. You are letting your tongue run away with you. Elaine managed to look abashed behind her bruises. Let them chew on that, Nynaeve thought. But Leandrin only smiled. Once your time as bait is done, you will tell us everything. You will want to. They say you will be very strong one day, but I will make sure you will always obey me, even before the great Master Balal works his plans for you. He is sending for Myrddraal, 13 of them. Those rosebud lips laughed the final words. Nynaeve felt her stomach twist. One of the Forsaken, her brain numbed with shock. The Dark One and all the Forsaken are bound in Shaial Ghul, bound by the Creator in the moment of creation. But the catechism did not help. She knew too well how much of it was false. Then the rest of it came home to her. 13 Murdro, and 13 sisters of the Black Aja. She heard Elaine screaming before she realized she was screaming herself, jerking uselessly in those invisible bombs of air. It was impossible to say which was louder, their despairing screams, or the laughter from Leandrin and Rihanna.
Chapter 52. In Search of a Remedy. Slumped on the stool in the Gleeman's room, Matt grimaced as Tom coughed again. How are we going to keep looking if he's so bloody sick he can't walk? He was ashamed as soon as he thought it. Tom had been as assiduous in searching as he had, pushing himself day and night when he had to know he was coming down sick. Matt had been so absorbed in his hunt that he had paid too little attention to Tom's coughing. The change from constant rain to steamy heat had not helped it. "Come on, Tom," he said. "Lopar says there's a wise woman not far. That is what they call a wisdom here, a wise woman. Wouldn't Nynaeve like that?" "I do not need any foul-tasting concoctions poured down my throat, boy." Tom stuffed a fist through his mustaches in a vain attempt to stop his hacking. "You go ahead looking. Just give me a few hours on my bed, and I'll join you." The racking wheezes doubled him over till his head was almost on his knees. "So I'm supposed to do all the work while you take your ease?" Matt said lightly. "How can I find anything without you? You learn most of what we hear." That was not exactly true. Men talked as freely over dice as they did while buying a Gleeman a cup of wine. More freely than they did with a Gleeman hacking so hard they feared contagion. But he was beginning to think that Tom's cough was not going to go away by itself. "The old goat dies on me. Who'll I play stones with?" he told himself roughly. "Anyway, your bloody coughing keeps me awake even in the next room." Ignoring the white-haired man's protests, he pulled Tom to his feet. He was shocked at how much of the Gleeman's weight he had to support. Despite the damp heat, Tom insisted on his patch-covered cloak. Matt had his own coat unbuttoned completely and all 3 ties of his shirt undone. But he let the old goat have his way. No one in the common room even looked up as he half-carried Tom out into the muggy afternoon. The innkeeper had given simple directions, but when they reached the gate and faced the mud of the mola, Matt almost turned back to ask another wise woman. There had to be more than one in a city this size. Tom's wheezing decided him. With a grimace, Matt stepped off into the mud, half carrying the Gleeman. He had thought from the directions that they must have passed the wise woman's house on their way up from the dock that first night. When he saw the long, narrow house with bunches of herbs hanging in the windows, right next to a potter's shop, he remembered it. Lopar had said something about going to the back door, but he had had enough of mud. And the stink of fish, he thought, frowning at the barefoot men squelching by with their baskets on their backs. There were tracks of horses in the street, too, just beginning to be obliterated by feet and ox carts. Horses pulling a wagon, or maybe a carriage. He had seen nothing but oxen drawing carts or wagons, either one in Tyr. The nobles and the merchants were proud of their fine stock, and never let one be put to anything like work. But he had not seen any carriages since leaving the walled city, either. Dismissing horses and wheel tracks from his mind, he took Tom to the front door and knocked. After a time, he knocked again. And again. He was on the point of giving up and returning to the White Crescent despite Tom coughing on his shoulder when he heard shuffling footsteps inside. The door opened barely more than a crack, and a stout, gray-haired woman peered out. "What do you want?" she asked in a tired voice. Matt put on his best grin. But I am getting sick myself at all these people who sound like there's no bloody hope. "Mother Gwena? My name is Matt Cawthon. Calvin Lopar told me you might do something for my friend's cough. I can pay well." She studied them a moment, seemed to listen to Tom's wheezes, then sighed. "I suppose I can still do that, at least. You might as well come in." She swung the door open and was already plodding toward the back of the house before Matt moved. Her accent sounded so much like the Amerlin's that he shivered, but he followed, all but carrying Tom. "I don't eat this," the Gleeman wheezed. "Bloody mixtures always taste like dung." "Shut up, Tom." Leading them all the way to the kitchen, the stout woman rummaged in one of the cupboards, taking out small stone pots and packets of herbs while muttering to herself. Matt sat Tom down in one of the high-backed chairs and glanced through the nearest window. There were 3 good horses tied out back. He was surprised the wise woman had more than one, or any for that matter. He had not seen anyone in Tyr riding except nobles and the wealthy. These animals looked as if they had cost more than a little silver. Horses again. I don't care about bloody horses now. Mother Gwena brewed some sort of strong tea with a rank smell and forced it down Tom's throat, holding his nose when he tried to complain. Pat decided she had less fat on her than he had thought, from the way she held the Gleeman's head steady in the crook of one arm while she poured the black liquid into him, no matter how hard he tried to stop her. When she took the cup away, Tom coughed and scrubbed at his mouth with equal vigor. "Ah, woman, I don't know whether you mean to drown me or kill me with the taste. You ought to be a bloody blacksmith." "You will take the same twice a day till that hacking is gone," she said firmly. "And I have a salve that I'll rub on your chest every night." Some of the weariness left her voice as she confronted the Gleeman, fists on her broad hips. "That salve stinks as bad as this tea tastes, but you will rub it on, thoroughly, or I'll drag you upstairs like a scrawny carp in a net and tie you to a bed with that cloak of yours. I never had a Gleeman come to me before, and I'll not let the first one that does cough himself to death." Tom glowered and blew out his mustaches with a cough, but he seemed to take her threat seriously. At least he did not say anything, but he looked as if he meant to throw her tea and her salve right back at her. The more this Mother Gwena talked, the more she sounded like the Amerlin to Matt. From the sour look on Tom's face and the steady stare on hers, he decided he had better smooth Matt.
Battery low.
All right, I'm gonna call Angela's life tonight. Tomorrow we'll be starting a new book, and my speaker will be fully charged. So I want to thank everyone for stopping by, and everyone keep stopping by. I appreciate all y'all support. Until next time, everyone, y'all stay safe.